Hello, SMITE fans, and welcome back to the SPL. Our first set of the day is done. The Leviathans were able to find themselves a win, and now we're about ready to jump into set number 2 with the Oni Warriors up against the Olympus Bolts. My name is J-Mac. Joining me here is going to be Trelly for set number 2. Sorry, I'm no Hindu man this time around. Sorry for that one, but hey, at least we get to have some fun here on the desk for our second set up. Oni Warriors and Bolts, two of the teams that... Oh, okay, hold on now. I got a complaint out here. We didn't get the cool graphic, Trelly.
Yeah, we spent all this money, getting that drawn out and made, and we didn't get the cool. I mean, this one's still cool.
I mean, these are cool, but they're nothing like we got at the start of the day. I feel like we just got robbed here.
Yeah, I mean, I like the drawn-on ones as well.
This is absurd. I'm going to file a complaint with the manager out here about that. But talking about these two teams here, I mean, the Oni Warriors, the Olympus Bolts, two teams that did not make any adjustments to their roster, or one of the few of the only teams that haven't really made any major roster changes out here. But looking at the schedule, we already had our Atlantis Leviathans and Camelot Kings set earlier on. There's a 2-1 for Leviathans. Now we've got the Bolts and the Warriors. And then make sure you're still tuned in. We still got 2 more days of action going on. Tomorrow will be our match of the week to start it out with the Olympus Bolts and the Camelot Kings, Solar Scarabs, and Jade Dragons. But talking about these two teams first, we got the Oni Warriors, and I think this is the one that we'll probably dig in a little bit more on here, because Oni Warriors, they finished in the bottom 2 last time around. They didn't make it through that Worlds qualification, and then they had to fight their way back into the SPL, Trelly, through those SPL play-ins earlier on in the year. And it wasn't necessarily an easy run for them, or a clean run, to say the least.
Yeah, the Oni Warriors, you'd think in a tournament like that where they're against a bunch of, not proven SPL level talent, they would be able to stomp out. But you're right, it wasn't that great of a performance. They still were able to win out, obviously, but not as dominant as you probably would have expected, or as they wanted to as well. So both of these teams definitely a lot to prove right now. The Oni Warriors obviously trying to, prove that they have this spot in the SPL, and they earned it. And the Olympus Bolts, like I said last set, if you're not a world champion right now, if you're not the Atlantis Leviathans, you still have a lot to prove, and you shouldn't be happy.
Yeah, a lot of these teams have a lot to prove out here in Season 9 of the SPL with so little changes, probably the least amount of changes that we've seen to the entirety of the league out here. But before we go a little bit further in and talk about here, we've actually got a very special video, a very special interview with Mifflin over with the Oni Warriors.
Jordan, we gotta go get Jordan. The pros are here. We gotta interview him. Jordan, come on, let's. All right. Just so all of you know what this show really is about, we are going to be doing guerrilla interviews. I find that we really get the best questions, the best answers when they're off the cuff. When people aren't prepared. You don't want to catch a player when their guard's up. Is the thing. When the guard is up, that's when the diplomatic answers come out. That's when they give you the nothing answers. I want to get out there, really journalistic truth, okay? So, as you can see, we've got the Oni Warriors in studio right now. Nika, what was it like for you finding out that I picked you up for the fantasy draft?
It was a dream come true, Yeah. Knowing that someone like you has faith in me,
of course,
of all people, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man.
Do you think it adds any additional weight to your gameplay?
Pressure, more than ever. I mean, I don't want to let my team down, myself, my fans, but I don't want to let you down more than anything.
Good. So you're thinking you will probably be the highest generating fantasy solo laner this year?
Yeah, easily. Do you see last year? If these guys step it up, then yeah.
So we've got confirmation from Nika that it is legitimately the rest of the Oni Warriors holding him back and stopping him from being that monolithic power out of the short lane. If you had to say just one word to all your fans at home, what would that be?
Patience.
And there you have it. That's my interview, the guerrilla interview with Nika. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
One word from Nika, patience. That's the main thing that I got out there. Also, the fact that Miff was just going on and on about the fantasy draft. That might be the best person that he picked up in that draft, in all honesty.
I'm going to be honest. If I was Nika, I would not have. I mean, even Miff, they were very close to Cubo there. Did you see that he said, we blame everyone but Nika. Then Cubo sort of turned back. I saw what he did to his chair at Worlds. There's no way I would have said anything close to that. I would have been like, Cubo's the man. He is carrying me every game, that sort of thing. But either way, it was a nice little surprise interview there from Mifflin.
Yeah, I saw that turnaround, that little head pivot from Cubo there at the end. But they're going to be going up against the Olympus Bolts, another team that hasn't changed up their roster aside from their coach this time around. And the Olympus Bolts are a team that have had their ups and downs. I mean, Phase 2, they were on this 8, nearly 9-set winning streak, nearly tying it out there for most wins in a row in the SPL, but then they started to falter, then we get to Worlds, and they have a bit of a fallout performance up against the Leviathans in the first round, though. Again, granted, to be fair, going up against the Leviathans when they were one of the hottest teams out at that point, is always a bit of a struggle. They came in this week or last week during the SPL kickoff LAN, went up against the Jade Dragons, took them to a 2-1 set there. And I think there's a lot of expectations out of this team for sticking together with this roster as long as they've been together.
Yeah, they have been together for quite some time, and they must be confident because of the fact that they opted to do that. Again, every team really, I would say most of the teams last year that were able to stick together like this, they really had their high points of the season. They think they can find that same sort of success that they had in the last season, obviously. So Olympus Bolts, hats out to them.
Well, unlike our little gorilla interview that we had with Nika, we've actually got the interview here this time around. We got Venenu from the Olympus Bolts for our pregame interview. First off, good luck in your set coming up today on here. When you're looking at a team like the Oni Warriors, what is one of the biggest threats that you can see on that team? You know, the player that you feel the most that y'all need to shut down?
Honestly, I mean, the best performing player last year specifically was Nika, in my opinion. He's definitely a very good player, plays the game every single day. So, but we have different plans going into them and different styles that we want to try out. And yeah, we're just confident going into them, did our research, and hopefully we got a good game plan.
You know, when you're going up against different teams here, obviously different teams play the meta certain ways here. Does that kind of change on these team by team? Do you feel that you have to change a lot more when you go up a team like the Warriors?
I don't think they really showed the most or like they performed the best per se at the play-ins for qualifying, but I think they learned the meta and learned how they want to play, being together for a bit of a longer time now. I think they kind of adjusted to what they want to play and what style. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, playing here on this new patch, this 9.3, you got a little bit of a taste of it during the SPL kickoff LAN last time around. Do you think that there's any big changes that are maybe kind of swapping around here that kind of benefit your team some?
Yeah. I mean, we've tried some different stuff out. We tried some stuff versus Jade last week. Jade tried stuff versus us. So we got a different read on the meta. Kind of see what we want to try. See if we try some more stuff. But yeah, just a learning experience for us, and yeah, hoping to perform well.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me for the pregame interview. I'll let you get back with the rest of the team the way you guys get set up, and good luck to you.
All right, thank you very much.
And that's something that we, talk about with a lot of teams. You come in here and you just, especially when it's like a brand new patch. Last week with the kickoff LAN, we'll put it out there, it wasn't the most serious of tournaments for some of the teams. Some players were trying out new things. Some teams were just out here having a little bit of fun. But now that we've gotten kind of our first look at how this new meta is with that very first set, some already unexpected changes. I mean, I don't think anybody called a Bakasura jungle coming out of nowhere. So it's always good hearing from players that, yes, we tried some stuff last week and may not have worked out, and we still have new things up in store, and that's really what it's all about when you come into these matchups.
Yeah, trying to take people off guard with your picks and bans specifically is always going to be a viable strategy. I mean, looking for that early aggression, trying to catch people off, and then, trying to make those small leads turn into massive ones. I mean, that's really what we're looking towards right now. Obviously, Lasbra had a little bit of a slow start against the Jade Dragon specifically, so looking to see more fire out of him. The picks right now in the jungle meta, I don't see, Lasbra playing the Kabrakan too much as he was doing. I really want to see these sort of like the Awelixes, things like that where he can get active early and look for those stylish ganks. That sort of play style I think fits the Bolts.
And it really feels like with these two teams in particular, their junglers is where their matchups get very volatile out here. I mean, when Lasbra is popping, the Olympus Bolts are going off it. But when Lasbra is not really having the most success, the Bolts sometimes tend to falter alongside it. And that can be said, I think, on the same vein here with the Oni Warriors. When Cuvo is having a monstrous of a game, and we got to see it during the World Qualifiers, he had like a 13-1 Fenrir game, and he was able to pop off. But games where Cuvo hasn't been able to pop has also been a bit of a struggle. How much do you think that really does impact both these two teams specifically going into this match?
I mean, right now, the jungle v jungle matchup is always going to be a high contention point. Not only do you want to try to get your duo lane ahead, try to get those obelisks, those sort of things, but if you ever can, you want to try to invade those jungle backhands, assert your dominance, maybe look for some 1v1 potential, that sort of thing. So, depending on Lasbra, Cuvo, whichever one of them want to get active early, maybe draft specifically towards that style where you're getting, the circuit we've seen more so in the jungle recently as these sort of nerfs, and you can call it a switch around, as you could say, as that sort of play style. Those sort of picks where you're wanting getting like the level 2s and level 3 fights, whereas, there's also these different sort of junglers, the Hoonbats, for example. You don't want to get active at all until like level 5. So whichever one of these junglers that comes out swinging is definitely going to help out their whole squad.
And one thing we noticed just in set number 1, the Leviathans were very much focused on their objective play across the map, making sure to get Gold Furies, Pyromancers, something that they really didn't even seem to care all that much about was the Obelisk. Compared to the Camelot Kings, I mean, the Kings, they were Obelisk fiends, I think is the best way to say. I mean, for the last 2-3 weeks of competitive, we've seen very few teams really putting a hard press towards that Obelisk. Do you think that that could even make an impact out here for these teams?
Yeah, when I think about supports like Neilma and Jake, I imagine they do want to be just diving in there, getting as much damage as possible. So obviously Genetics wanted to do the same sort of thing, get that Indra Scepter, get his damage online. So awesome Jake on an aggressive pick with the Indra Scepter. That's going to be fun to watch for sure.
We'll see what some of those picks are going to be here. Picks and bans, game number 1 between the Oni Warriors and the Olympus Bolts in our second set of Season 9 of the SPL, officially kicking off here. And the first 2 bans right out the gate going to be Erlong Shen and Kabrakan. No surprise, we've been seeing a massive rise of Erlong Shen last year. That still continued up until now. Kabrakan, who was running the support for a little while there, also making his way into jungle and solo lane. Now, probably nothing too out of the ordinary seeing these two taken out.
No, honestly, for me, Erlong and Gilgamesh kind of go hand in hand. They're these early game aggressive warriors, right? That just look for crazy picks early. They have a lot of CC, a lot of lockdown, that sort of thing. So just taking away the Erlong, not wanting Lasbra to get active early, as I was just mentioning. Both of these junglers are going to be trying to get active early. They want this targeted aggression early, and Erlong arguably is the best early game level 2, level 3 before ultimate jungle.
Do you think it's a little bit wild to see a Dodgy ban in the top 3 out here? I mean, typically it's once you've gotten your first couple of gods, Dodgy almost usually becomes that counter pick kind of option there. Or you ban it away after you've seen, oh no, we don't have a lot of CC immunity or ways to deal with her. Does it spark maybe is a little bit strange to see her here in the top 2 bans?
I would say, yes, it is a little bit surprising. Obviously, Dodgy a good pick in her own right, but better so as that sort of counter pick when they don't have any CC immunity available, that sort of thing. But to me, that just says the Olympus Bolts have a plan going in. Maybe they want to draft the Atlas, for example. Maybe they want to get a Thaw. Things like this that are going to provide you pressure, but not want to deal with the powwow, not want to deal with getting beads, that sort of thing. So if you are going to be banning this Dodgy early, I think the Olympus Bolts, they know what they're trying to draft here.
Last ban here out of the Oni Warriors going to be the Khepri. So we got a little bit of everything banned away here. Some jungle, some mid, some support. On the other side for the Bolts, a little bit of that jungle priority taken out. And still one more ban to go. But there are a lot of gods out on tail. And we saw just how much the Leviathans really liked Atlas. The Titans really showed a favoritism towards that god during their matchups last week as well. Kleena has been probably the top pick out of gods so far over towards that solo/jungle role here. And even Bologna has still been able to hold her weight here in the picks and bans.
Yep, there goes to me, again, the yin and yang. If you're going to get rid of Erlang, you got to match the Gilgamesh. Those two junglers are what you're wanting to look at very early. It looks like the Oni Warriors are going to try to get solo pressure right out the gate. The RDO for Nika. Again, we could see it in support, but more often than not, we are seeing this RDO in the solo lane just get as much pressure as possible and be super annoying to deal with. Now, on the flip side, on the Bolts, as you just mentioned, this Kleena pick, which very highly picked in its own right. You always hold on to that flex potential. You could be just getting lots of solo pressure or going into the jungle. But look at this. We have an AMC. That could be a mid AMC for Ven, or that could be an ADC, obviously in its own right for Barracuda.
I mean, this is one of the top picks back at Worlds in this AMC, not just for his flex potential, but also just because of the shred he provided with that Stinger. Did get a little bit of a hit, and from that point, we didn't really see a whole lot of AMC. Teams weren't focusing on making sure to get this god here, so very curious as to where this AMC is going to fall in place here. Though, the option does go back over to the Oni Warriors, and Nemesis is the lock-in. This is a god that's really been rising up in the ranks as of recent.
Yeah, Nemesis definitely going to offer a lot of, consistent damage right now. I believe we touched on it a few times. The hi-rez Lament buff benefits her greatly. Obviously, a lot of auto-attack cancels, auto-attack resets in Nemesis' kit with the shield and things of that nature. So, not a crazy early pressure character, but Nemesis really can find those ganks at level 5, even some targeted aggression at level 2. And we have seen a little bit of solo play out of this Nemesis. So, no matter where she really goes at the moment, she has a lot of auto-attack damage and has that late-game carry potential. But look at this. We are seeing a Nox once again. This is like the third Nox we've seen since the beginning of this season, not too long ago.
It's absolutely mind-boggling. The fact that she went the entirety of Season 8 until, Game 1 of Leviathans versus Bolts at Worlds, never saw an ounce of play, and then she gets the one pick, and now she's kind of just been thrown back on the radar by just about everybody out here. So Nox locked in for the Bolts, and their immediate first ban after is going to be Geb, which always kind of strikes my curiosity as to where Geb typically just forgetfully ends up in the meta. It always feels like Geb is like the god to go to, or nobody's ever looking at him anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the Geb is just one of the, if not the hardest counter to Nox at the moment. Anytime that Shadow Lock goes in, you get shielded, and now you've used 2 abilities for 1, and the Geb shield still is getting the value. So if you are going to draft this Nox, and you could, again, put it in mid or support, you have a couple different avenues there. You do not want the Geb shield to be able to just, cancel out that ability, obviously. So it's going to be really difficult to get the value out of this Nox pick if you are letting the Geb through.
Yeah, we'll be Geb and Fafnir banned away by the Bolt. So a couple of shots over at Neil Ma on the side of the Oni Warriors, making sure the support has to dig a little bit deeper into that God pool. Camazotz as a ban on the side of the Oni Warriors with 1 more to go. With how much we've been seeing Camazotz solo, it seems that the Oni Warriors may not be entirely convinced that this Kleina is just going over in towards that solo lane or even over towards that jungle. We've been seeing a lot of flex with her amongst the teams in the SCC. 1 more ban still waiting out here by the Warriors. And it will be Fenrir with some of the recent changes to him. We've been seeing him go a lot more towards the jungle as of recent.
Yeah, Fenrir, if you're able to get off that full brutalize, you are going to do a whole brunt of damage onto the early carries, such as, your mid laners, that sort of thing. And if you could get to the, if you could get to this Persephone, force out that leap early, going to be very difficult to deal with. So just saying, hey, even if you are a jungle, even if you are a support, we don't quite know where you're going with all these picks. They're sort of trying to get baited into it at the moment. So they just want to make sure that that is not going to be the case. But the Bolts are opting to go for a Hebo here. Now, a few different options, but for me, I think this is Lasber on the Hebo jungle.
You think this is going to go over to Lasper here?
I hope so.
Really? Well, in that case, then this knocks over towards the dual lane probably with the Muzen Cobb as the potential here. So Olympus Bolts leaving a lot open to be interpreted as far as their draft is concerned. Not much up for interpretation on the side of the Warriors, though. Everything that they've picked up so far has pretty much slotted themselves immediately into their lanes, and it's not going to change here with a Bacchus as a final pickup as far as 4th goes there, though with 5th. Charlie, you kind of caught me off guard just saying this is going to be the Hebo jungle. I don't doubt that it could go there, but you seem pretty confident on it.
Here's the thing. I did just make a tier list with Ven, and obviously it hasn't been released yet, but I can give you a little sneak peek. He put Hebo at S. He said, this is an S mid laner. But for me, I just think that the Hebo jungle would finally give Lasber this early aggression. I mean, at the moment, Nox for me is the support. It has to be awesome to take on this Nox. So at that point, you're just saying, is Haddix going to take this Kleina, or is he going to give it over, to the jungle? And so that's really the question at the moment. And I think with the Doom Orb, with the speed buff, Hebo on the carpet, and his buff to his 3 now where he's not rooted during Water Spout, he can get a lot more active on this map. But it looks like the Olympus Bolts are still just trying to keep us all in waiting. They're not going to show that last pick just yet.
I mean, if this is the case, this is not a very tanky squad that the Bolts have lined up with. I mean, Kleina still that flex if it is going to be the Hebo jungle, and that puts Kleina over towards solo lane. Cupid locked in means that this AMC very likely slotted over towards that mid roll now. So now we're looking at Nox Cupid as a dual lane up against Bacchus Chiron. Where does that matchup really show favoritism towards Trelly?
I mean, if you are going to go the Bacchus burp early, which I imagine once you see this Nox, you really can't do, because that's going to get canceled out right away by the Nox silence. You want to slot into that Frenzy start where you're against a Nox now and a Cupid. They have so many cripples and lockdowns. You really can't flop freely on this Bacchus pick. So Neil is going to have to, be very more contained on this pick, not being able to create so much space, not be able to go in as freely with how much lockdown the Bolts have drafted.
So Hebo towards the jungle here. And the Kleina over into the solo lane. Not surprising to see that assassin make her way back over into the side lane. We've seen more of it in the jungle as of recent, but the Kleina Artio matchup, how does that one kind of go over there, Trelly?
I really don't think that Kleina really wants to trade abilities with an Artio, so it's kind of just going to be, let's get this Soul Eater online, let's clear the way from as far away as possible and not get caught out here. I think Kleina's going to have a rough matchup, at least in the early game, because her clear can get canceled out pretty evenly there, so I would say if you are Haddix on this Kleina solo against Nika on the Artio, you're probably going to want to dial it back and just stay, as far away as possible in the early game.
I mean, looking at this Bolts roster, obviously they haven't dropped it a whole lot of tankiness to their side. I mean, they're having a Nox and a Kleina as far as their front line goes out here. So what's kind of the time frame that the Bolts need to meet in order to kind of secure themselves a safer point as we start reaching towards that late game?
I mean, they obviously have the double carries drafted. They have the Cupid and the AMC. Not only that, you have a Hebo who's pretty much a ticking time bomb where late game he can just take one person out of the fight pretty much easy, like whenever into the water spout crushing wave combo. So this is more so a late game comp, obviously. You have double carries, so you're going to want to sit back a little bit, not on your heels so much where you can't find aggression early. You have some avenues there with if Awesome Drake can find the lockdown on the Nox support, obviously. So you want to look for your early picks, and you want to let these carries get online.
So we're looking at less conventional here out of the bolts, a bit more towards the standard here on the side of the Oni Warriors with RDO over towards that solo lane, Bacchus in the dual lane. Rounding out here with a Chiron for the Oni Warriors, what's their avenue to finding that victory, Trelly?
I mean, getting this Persephone online is definitely going to help you out. Nemesis finding her ganks wherever she can, but you have a double Guardian comp right now, so you're going to have a lot. I think your team fight is where you're going to be looking to right now. You have a lot of CC, RDO, and Bacchus just being as disruptive as possible. I think your team fight, you really flourish in this with this draft.
So it comes down to the team fights for the Oni Warriors and maybe some of the picks here on the side of the Olympus Bolts. Not a single tank to be seen on the side for the Chaos team here. Olympus Bolts and the Oni Warriors, again, unchanging their rosters through. We'll have to see how that pans out for them. Game number 1, let's throw it right over to the casters. We got Gore and Mifflin standing by.
Yeah, the Warriors earning their spot back earlier this year. We'll get to see how well they fare up against the Olympus Bolts, a team that stuck together, Mifflin, throughout their offseason. Again, we'll get to see how well that rewards them. It is, as they called out on the desk, the Habwa in the jungle. Do you want me to say Hebo or Habwa this
First
this
off,
set?
Habwa. Secondly, they didn't call it. One of them called it.
Trelly called it.
Uh-huh.
J-Mac repeated it.
J-Mac,
And now I'm
J-Mac
echoing that.
questioned it, okay?
He did. Okay.
Tried
Well,
to make our new guy second guess himself.
How do you feel about him in this matchup? Like, you know, knockups specifically up against, like, you know, the RDO and the control that she's going to be putting onto the backline.
I think that Lazarus is going to have a very good matchup, specifically in avoiding the RDO. You don't want to play around
You
her
want
in the
out.
early game. Yeah, leave Haddix to his own devices over there. Instead, though, look at the matchup in the jungle 1v1. Hebo bops Nemesis. You could say, sure, Crushing Wave immutable by the shield, but also Water Spout no longer rooting you. You can hold on to that ability, remove the shield with CC, and then start applying your damage. You also got sneaky quick ganks up against the likes of Darda's. Knock up into ultimate, going to be very easy to follow up for Ven with his own ultimate, the Stinger. You've got great lockdown elsewhere.
Oh, wow. Yeah, speaking of elsewhere.
Yeah.
He wanted Lasper to leave that lane alone, not Cuvo. And he is going to find first blood for them. Good aggression. And I was going to mention this. Nemesis was one of the best gods for Cuvo all last year. We got to see that as well during the SBL qualifiers, play-ins, whatever you want to call them. And here it is again, making strides for him.
Yeah, I was concerned for Cuvo because the two guys that I associate with him most are Surcat and Nemesis. And Surcat has seen some shifts that shouldn't affect her jungle prowess too much. The only thing really hurting it in the jungle is the reduction on the leap range. So maybe we see Cuvo go back towards that favor, but in Nemesis, getting it off to an early start, going down that mace tree as well, could be a Jotuns, could be a Crusher if he so chooses, depending on the pace of his own jungle pathing. That's a great start for you. But even then, Habwa is a scaling master. He is just there to get to level 20. He's just there to be a mage in the late game. That's not to take away from his gank presence early, but I would say between these two junglers, Cuvo Fred should likely be the one to strike first.
We'll see. At least a little skirmish between them there. Yeah, a nice little smack by Cuvo Fred. Just put him down a slight bit of his health. And there's a lot to talk about, you know, scaling-wise, damage-wise. I think, you know, Habwa's going to suffer a little bit up against the Persephone here. But really, I wanted to mention the fact that the Warriors banned the Fenrir. Now, Fenrir has been known, like, anytime you see a Habwa rise up, typically Fenrir follows quickly behind just because the Brutalize can chase him down and it causes so much trouble. Was that like the locket? Like you see Fenrir banned and you're like, ooh, and you just immediately go to it? Or do you think this was something that was in their mind? I mean, their draft was already relatively squishy prior to that.
I'll answer your question in two parts. One, I've never made that noise in my life.
No?
And two, yeah, Habwa feels a lot better now that Fenrir has been removed, especially with some of the changes. Generally, it's Fenrir support is the answer to Habwa anywhere on the map, so you can still survive that damage output. In a DPS race, an Assassin Fenrir versus a full damage Habwa, Habwa still likely does win that. But when you're a tank Fenrir and you still do have great scale or great base damage on Brutalize, great base damage on Unchained, that's when it makes it a little bit harder for Habwa to operate, and tank Fenrir has seen some nerfs the last couple of phases of patches. So maybe we see the Olympus Bolts saying, okay, well, that is one of the poorer matchups removed, but I don't think it was, oh, Fenrir's out,
Yeah.
then we go to Hebo.
They weren't necessarily worried about it at the top. Honestly, I guess that we could have called that. They would have banned it if they were really scared about it, and they didn't. So the Warriors instead end up with the Nemesis, not necessarily, again, a downside for them. Persephone up against Amuz and Cobb. Now, Amuz and Cobb kind of stole mid lane at the end of Season 8 to the point where one of Shinto's, like, not one, 5, I believe, of the 10 games Leviathan's played at Worlds, Shinto played on AMC, and he won every single one of those. One of them was like a 30 KDA game. It's just absolutely nuts performance that this god can bring to the mid. And he disappeared hard because we've been talking nothing about these flat pen items for mages. So why is he back?
Flat pen got nerfed, first off, so maybe that's one way back in. Relative power now leaning a little bit more so in favor of some of these Hunter mids. I think that AMC is pretty resistant to meta shifts just because of Stinger doing defense shred. It is phenomenal. It's a great burst potential between the ultimate and the second ability. Ven is going to be able to remove just about anyone, especially a Nemesis who might just dash in.
Oh, there's going to be a good crushing wave from Lasbra. Does not get the kill, though. And the knockup from Neil, it's a little bit better. Jake steps too far. The team gets melted apart. The Oni Warriors cleaning up 2 kills just on the left side of the mid lane. And Mifflin, we're 4.5 minutes in. They've got a 2,000 gold lead.
The Oni Warriors strike quick in this one. Look, that's the downside of Habwa in the jungle, right? You use Crushing Wave and they lived. Uh-oh. Now I'm out of position and surrounded. Immediately followed up. Dardes with just a great grasp of death. Locks down a couple of targets, and from there, can't sleep on Neoma. Double knockup as well.
No.
That is nearly just a dream scenario for the Oni Warriors. And now the Olympus Bolts solidly on the back foot. I wonder if the Warriors are going to try for some early objectives. They've got an air quotes auto attack jungle is Jotuns in that first slot, so auto attack not quite there for the Nemesis just yet, but Vote gonna have pretty great objective pulling capacity. Dardes maybe not the best secure on the planet, but certainly great space control. I'd love to see the Warriors push this lead.
Just in case you wanted to see, again, how powerful and potent. He
Good
got a
God.
2-man stun, Mifflin. That hurts. That alone hurts, let alone the 2-man knockup afterward.
And then the grasp of death and the bone rush.
CC chains is maybe the name of the game here for the Warriors. And this is something that I think should have been brought up earlier. That's on me. This is a really squishy comp from the Bolts. Like, you can't afford to get caught out like that because you don't have health bars right now.
No, it is a pick-centric comp from the Bolts. They are not looking for 5-on-5 engagements. They're looking to jump people in the jungle. They're hoping Jake finds a great shadow lock and Lazarus close enough by to follow up, or Ven is. But in a true 5-on-5 engagement, the initiation of the Bolts is incredibly weak. It is all single target CC.
Yeah, who does it?
You don't want to walk in headfirst into a composition that has tank shred potential as well, and, well, the Oni Warriors have got that thanks to Cuvo Fred out of the jungle. So it is going to be difficult for the Bolts to find their footing. I think it's more so now the Bolts slow it down and wait for the Oni Warriors to make a mistake.
You know, you kept mentioning it prior to this. When we talk about fantasy, you got Barra, I got Vin. Maybe some skin in this. You also have Nika, though, so you're kind of balancing things out over
Nika's
here.
gonna be
You're
just
right.
fine.
It's just me who's watching this one. He's 0-0-0 for now, though, in the mid lane. Has gone for the Jotuns as well, so it feels a little more ability-based for the Amuz and Cobb. Transcendence for Barra as well, and for Vote. They both are going for a slower stacking item. Same thing for Haddix.
A lot of damage.
Over on the side lane, Nika gets silenced for a slight bit, but this looks like it's going to be a turnaround. Cuvo, Neil Ma, ready to invade on the blue buff. Nika keeping everybody involved and distracted. So they just walk in, scoop it up, walk away. Not a contest from the Bolts to be seen.
So here's the thing about RDO and Solo, and that she doesn't really have that many bad matchups, if any at all.
Yeah.
She doesn't. She's also got a 2-level lead just about over Haddix, and Haddix has to channel his abilities to get the full brunt of that damage out there. Nika's got multiple ways to deal with that. Either just reposition himself or stun him out. And we already saw with the damage output. Bear Swipe doing upwards of 300 thanks to that Celestial Legion helm in the first slot. I think Haddix just needs to be left alone on an island now. Just cut your losses there. The Olympus Bolts, they need to look elsewhere on the map to find their wins.
So 5 buffs on the map. One of those is green, and so maybe you can ignore slightly, right?
I will.
I think it's going to be easy enough for the Bolts to get theirs. It's respawning now. Speed, Lasper picks up. Blue, red, And their purple gets taken
That's
down.
the
Neil
combo.
just gets rocked, though. But this is going to be the turnaround.
ult.
There's a grasping death, holds Lasbra in place. Cuvo is going in immediately onto Venenu. Lasbra dies off thanks to Dart as his damage, but they aren't going to be able to find the chase. Vin, Jake are going to be able to walk away. It's 1-for-1, but you lose your jungler if you're the Bolts.
And you only lost your support if you're the Oni Warriors. Look, that's the combo, though. That is what this draft for the Olympus Bolts is built for. Shadow Lock into Stinger into Crushing Wave is going to work against anybody. If it's working against Neil right now, it's going to do it to just about anyone on the Oni Warriors, maybe barring Nika once he gets that second relic. But even now, it could work out. You're not really rotating over towards the solo lane too often. But it's a very committal engagement. Crushing Wave in those scenarios will always put you out of position. You're always doing it towards your opposition. So Lasbra, left high and dry, gets caught out by the ultimate of Dardas, and Dardas very easily able to secure the kill from there. Another downside of Habwa is you kind of need Blink to get into these team fights at this portion of the game. No beats. Means Grasp of Death, if your ultimate is down, is always going to work. Lasbra now 3 levels down. That's a steep hill to climb.
Yeah, it's wow. Yeah, difficult. 2 levels in mid, 2 levels for solo, and 1 level there for Bera, so maybe not as bad as the rest of the team. 3,500 gold, 4,400 experience, and we're only 9 minutes in. The Warriors.
What?
And that's another 2-man knockup from Neil. It doesn't result in as much, but their positioning around this red buff should be a pretty easy confirmation for them. They're going to steal that one away. And then just to rub salt in the wound, not even picking it up afterward, just to make sure that they know, we don't need the red buff. We just want the experience. They're going to do it again for the purple. And I am just watching. I mean, the Bolts can't do anything. They're spectating this just as much as we are.
Yeah, I called for that. Yeah, they find the TKO on 3 members of the Olympus Bolts with Centaurus through the Tier 1 and Tier 2 and mid for the Olympus Bolts. And
no way.
You can't step up afterward. Barracuda, he's got to do it.
Oh, he dropped the ult. It's just going to be a little off the mark in terms of timing. Gold Fury secured here for the Warriors. So they weren't ahead already. Well, hey, how about 4,600 gold for you 10 minutes in? Mifflin, this is a stifling lead. I mean, this is one that admittedly starts to suffocate you a little bit in terms of itemization. You can see, you know, Spear of Desolation already completed. You've got your Breastplate of Valor already finished, whereas everyone on the Bolts playing a little bit of catch-up. Genji's Guard there, mid lane skirmish. You get some good damage under Dardes and Cuvo. And so the question has to be, you know, 4K down, the experience gap is massive between them. Do the Bolts scale well into late game enough? I mean, you said they're not even looking for 5-on-5s.
They're not looking for the 5-on-5, but the combo of what we talked about earlier, Shadow Lock, then ult, Lasbra ult, is going to be reduced as the game goes on. Eventually, it's just Shadow Lock and Ven's there, or just Shadow Lock and just Lasbra's there. You're not going to need every single one of those pieces to make the combo work every single time, and that's what the Bolts scaling looks like. It's the ability to execute these ganks in the jungle a little bit more easily as time goes on. But I'd argue, with the style of composition that the Oni Warriors are going for, and with the lead they're already playing with, those opportunities are going to be few and far between. The Oni Warriors want to group up as 5. They want to be that roaming death ball, kind of playing around Nika, playing through that initiation that this RDO affords you, or even Neilmov, he's going to keep landing 2 or 3-man knockups as consistently as he has been. It has to. This is one way back in for the Bolts, but it is risky.
Yeah, it's going to be spurted out by Nika, and so he's going to be able to walk forward. They have to leash it immediately. I thought they would at least put some more pressure on it, see, maybe go for a little bit of a 50-50 Jake. Takes a decent chunk of damage here in mid. That's the other thing. Slow scaling on the support. Bera hiding around the wall here just to try and stay alive in his tier 1. I think recognizing that he's not going to be able to do anything about the purple. It does maintain his life, albeit and maybe not the most glamorous way. Still only has the beads, hasn't hit that level 12 mark versus the beads Aegis on the other side, and those are big things. I mean, the relics, you know, at this point, completely neutral all across the board. But that experience lead for the Warriors should give them some advantages, Bera. I'm so sorry for you. Under the tier 1, and it's going to be Vote that gets the kill. Cuvo does so much damage in that process. And like, it didn't even exist. The tower didn't matter to them.
An awesome Jake now isolated in the jungle. Silence is good to stop the stun. Dash should secure him his safety here, but only for a moment. Neilmog going to take use of this time to steal away as many flowers as he can from that obelisk. And the Oni Warriors have got a firm grasp on this game. Surprised that we haven't seen the Warriors group up and try and move over towards that Pyromancer, continue playing around that lead. Maybe it'll be the Olympus
there's
Bolts.
a good knockup. Wow, yeah, the damage is there. So Lasbert, I mean, pretty much exactly what you said. He's got the Doom Orb. He's not necessarily caught up in terms of levels, but
Or items.
or really anything. But he got a kill, or at least assisted with one there, and has opened up that conversation. Pyromancer now
Going
started
quick.
by the bolts. If you had called it, if the Warriors had done this, it wouldn't be available for them. They're going to go for a good zone. Jake misses the root. They're going to fall back off of this one, not feeling confident, even with the numbers advantage.
Yeah, Lazarus, they're so far behind that they need their ultimates to secure the objective, and they already used them to finish off that fight. I think Lazarus would have been very willing to trade his life in exchange for Pyro, but with Crushing Wave down, you don't want to leave it up to risk.
Yeah.
Hero Fred has similar levels of damage to Habois at this point on Nemesis with Slice and Dice. Not a sentence you get to say too often, but when you're 3 levels up in an entire item, that's the window that you afford yourself. So the Oni Warriors still firmly in control of this game. Pyromancer's still an option going forward. I would say that Haddix has done a very good job of restabilizing in the lane. Now has Soul Eater completed, goes into the Genji's guard as well, so has some survivability for himself, but an entire item down on Nika, that's not a great look.
No, it feels terrible as
For
well
him.
in game. Yeah, for Haddix, for Nika, he's loving this. He's like, man, I get to play Artio. He might be a little like bland of the Artio at this point because she got so much play last year, but he's like, Artio, I'm an item up. It doesn't even matter that we're the same level. Like, I get to control this lane like it's nothing. They've been invading those buffs. It slowed down a little bit from the Warriors from earlier. They're still hovering right around that 6K gold mark, so not really a lot pushing in their favor. You can see, I think, the dip down that was the kill specifically on Nanika. But other than that, they've been getting more of the neutral camps, right? You know, your single Harpy over there on left, a lot in the middle in terms of mid camps, greater Scorpions, things like that. So the Bolts, you know, I guess for their solace, are confirming their own buffs this time around. And that can only mean so much.
And now, the Oni Warriors will have the opportunity to pose a difficult question to the Olympus Bolts. With Primal Fury respawning, that means the Oni Warriors have got a POI that they can group up on. They've had pretty solid control of the left side of the map, considering that Barracuda's been locked inside of his tower for the last couple minutes.
Good knock up on the Jake, but the dash gets him on out of there. I thought there was going to maybe be a little bit more, but they decide not. And honestly, that should be the opening for the Primal Fury, right? You were calling for it earlier. They've just got more damage now. The Bolts going to go for a trade they were willing to before. Pyromancer for the Fury. Artio is around here. So's Dardez. They're going to get the Pyromancer for the Bolts. And the Primal Fury shortly thereafter will go towards the Warriors. So ultimately, gold should just kind of shift about the same up for both of these teams. Maintain, yeah, around the 6K gold lead for the Warriors.
Yeah, small win for the Oni Warriors there, and that's why I was so surprised that they were unwilling to group up on the Pyromancer. Removing that opportunity for the Olympus Bolts to split the map could have been massive. Barracuda, though, he's been here before.
Yeah, this is just deja vu. I mean, if Cuvo had decided he wanted to go in, maybe could have made something happen. Jake going to shadow lock Neil Ma. Purple buff gets stolen out from right in front of their faces. Lasber's over here. And it feels like this could, it's just volatile, right? It could explode at any moment. But neither of these teams, especially the Bolts with this deficit, feel confident going in. Lasber's finished off a Rod of Tahuti. And of course, I'm opening this for discussion, but I'm watching Vote and Cuvo dance between a Tier 1 and a Tier 2. They might be able to find Jake here. Silence going to be good along with the lock. There's going to be the ult from Cuvo. They're looking for the chase. Slice and Dice is good, but an ult from Jake should be what they need to peel that off. They pull back at least a good little bit from the Bolts there. But it's this Rada Tahuti. Is that, I mean, 3 levels down, it's still not great, but some good damage for Lasber.
Yeah, massive infusion of power, 140, I believe, 10% penetration, and additional damage once people are low HP is going to come up massive, especially on a pick like Habois. 3-1, you're already dropping someone to around 50%, find the ultimate immediately afterward, should be able to close up that gap slightly. And it's something that I've been preaching since I've joined the casting team. Damage from behind is much more important than defense from behind. You don't want to fall behind and say, okay, well, they're killing me so quickly, I need Breastplate of Valor, I need Void Stone to survive. No, you need the ability to kill them before they can apply their damage, and Rada Tahuti will help you out in that regard. But still, it's an expensive item. 3 levels down, only 2 items into the build for Lasbra, and gold comes slowly. You need money to make money. That's a lesson everywhere.
Yeah, you just described capitalism. And unfortunately here,
Economics.
the Bolts, well, they're lacking in the funds. Coffers are looking pretty empty. So they'll try to catch up. Again, I mean, I see Tier 3 item differences just in totality between some of these roles. Tier 2s and some other places, but You're definitely feeling the brunt of it. And just look at them. Cuvo's been living inside their jungle. I can't remember. I guess it was 2 red buffs ago. I think Vin got one, but other than that, it was the first red buff, I think, that was the only one he's picked up. Cuvo just lives in their jungle.
He does, and he's super ahead. He's pretty hard to kill. Maybe this Fields of Love could be enough. Heavenly Sprint will get him out of there, and now it's Jake isolated.
There's a good knock-up from Neil. Jake's still hanging around. They're going to contend this purple buff. Not going to confirm it, though. The Warriors do manage once again to steal that one away. So, again, these 2 buffs on the left-hand side, I'll just live in rent-free in the Warriors' pockets. They don't even have to worry about scooping them up. Pyromancer's down. Primal Fury's down. There's not as much for the Warriors now as there was like 6 minutes ago when we were asking for them to do a little bit more, maybe, with this lead. And now it's that awkward position, right? You're 7K ahead, almost 7K, about 6,800, 6,700. And this is where things get weird, because you want kills, you want farm, you want neutral objectives. I guess towers count as some of those, and they're going to be able to strip one away. Maybe they're going to get the fight they want. It's going to be Lasbra who goes forward immediately into Neil. Neil's low, and they should be able to pick up this kill, but is that single pick going to be enough? Can they turn it into something more? Cuvo does stop his back and immediately catches Barra out. Barra's looking at the wave, and it's not going to be enough. Cuvo actually has to run away, uses the blink to disengage. Silence ready from Jake. The lock is good. The beads get used. Cuvo should run away, but the ult thrown out by Barra, and they pick up 2 on the left side, and they're looking for a little bit more. Dardes is getting chased under the tier 2. They get the kill. Nika's here, but it's too late to save the team.
The Oni Warriors get so aggressive on the left side of the map. Was it really worth all that for a tier 1 tower? I'll answer the question for you. It was not. The Olympus Bolts crushed that aggression and are able to match it in their own right. Tier 1 tower return, tier 2 being looked at. Great rotation from Haddix, outpaces Nika, gets to that fight first, and this is where the Oni Warriors have historically struggled even when they are able to establish these massive leads. They don't know where to transition it or have not been able to. I would argue 8,000 gold up, 18 minutes in. I'm not grouping up on a tier 1 tower. I'd have been hightailing it to the Fire Giant.
Unfortunately for them, I don't know if they have the luxury anymore. Again, those kills, you have to think of the bounties behind them.
They
There's
cut
a lot
the
of
lead in
experience. Vote, sorry, I broke my brain. Vote's level 20 already, so he hit the 20 in 20. Has done well. 4 levels over Barra. That's where I was looking for the experience gain, because I saw that just a huge chunk in favor. But it goes to Vin, who's got all of the kills. It's him and Haddix who hits 20 as well. So maybe not where they wanted it. Still a big deficit in the jungle. Still a big deficit for the carries.
It is. So the Oni Warriors, with less gold in their coffers, less gold leads, still have got pretty significant advantage in experience. So I still think they are capable of trying to group up on this Fire Giant and force a fight. Take a fight in neutral territory when you're not running away, and the Olympus Bolts will still be playing at this deficit.
Yeah, like this.
But one massive mistake has already cut that lead in half. The Olympus Bolts have a much better chance of defending the Fire Giant now than they would have just 2 minutes ago. The Oni Warriors may have just let slip a massive advantage, and the Olympus Bolts essentially in evening up the kills, probably buy themselves 5 or 6 more minutes before the Oni Warriors can feel confident enough to step back up to that Fire Giant.
Well, we got to see exactly what you were talking about earlier, where it's not necessarily the 5-on-5 that is deadly from the Bolts. It's that pick potential. Oh, you killed off Neil. All of a sudden it turns into a scrap where it's 1 by 1 by 1. And I think that's a big deal for them. Gold Fury, by the way, goes the way of the Warriors. They're not going to get away for free, though. Dardes just melted in the mid lane. And it's only going to be 1 kill for such a big objective. But from behind, that's going to feel pretty good for Lasberg. Good experience, good gold infusion into his pockets. And they're going to get a tier 1 tower, Mifflin. And it doesn't seem like they're stopping there.
No, the Olympus Bolts have gotten to the point where the composition works. The picks are ringing true. Neilmont blink forward.
And throws out his ult, I believe hits Jake, but only Jake at that. Jake's going to move forward, gets aggressive onto Cuvo. Doesn't force the beads, though. Beads still down. They're going to be coming back up, so this could be the go button for the Warriors if they want to try to turn this around or retaliate in a full 5-on-5 fight. But instead, I mean, everything has just flipped topsy-turvy. The kills back in favor of the Bolts, the gold lead still pretty massive in favor of the Warriors. They've got that going for them. But they feel a lot more timid in terms of where they're getting aggressive and how they're choosing their fights.
Yeah, 5,000 gold means so much less now than it did 10 minutes ago. Now the experience gap has been closed at just over 2,000. Most people starting to rapidly approach level 20. You're starting to see really it's just the support suffering, or the ADC and Barracuda is going to catch up eventually because you can only hit level 20 once. Vote may have got there first, but hasn't done much with it since. The Olympus Bolts, they were biding their time. and it started to work out. It feels like all the momentum has left the Oni Warriors. Now it's the Olympus Bolts making proactive plays. It's the Olympus Bolts choosing where these fights happen, and in a pick composition, that's the ideal scenario.
They had the wind with them. Their sails were full. Everything was great. And then, like, they took one turn, and all of a sudden the wind's pushing against them. They're moving backwards somehow. Things are slipping.
Got to bring out the oars.
Yeah, they're going to have to figure out how to right this ship and make sure they continue in the right direction. It's going to be a ward game around the Fire Giant. Maybe controls thing. Lasbra isolated, Cuvo as well. It's the chase down for who can kill the jungler faster. And honestly, Nika's winning that fight, but luckily Venenu's here to try and peel for his jungler. It's going to be just enough, but is that going to leave Jake out to dry? A lot getting dumped over here in the jungle, and it's going to be aggression. Neil Ma trying to lead the way, and good shots from Vote. It's going to be able to get rid of Awesome Jake, but Nika trades his life out for that. That solo laner worth so much at this point compared to what Jake is. But does that open up the FG?
Lazarus still has beads and blink, has to return back to base, so should be able to regroup with his team and get back over towards that Fire Giant. Jake trading out his life in exchange for Nika is the highest value trade I think Jake could have gotten there. Not only is he going to respawn first because he's much lower level, 4 down on Nika, so 20 seconds left on Jake with 40 for the soul laner of the Oni Warriors. I think the Olympus Bolts are in a position yet again where they could regroup once Jake respawns and try and find some more picks around the Fire Giant. You can already tell that the information battle is going to win the game around these Fire Giant dances. Look at the ward coverage for both of these teams on the right-hand side of the map. I couldn't tell you which one's winning because there's too many over there.
Well, I can tell you who's at least winning in terms of sheer quantity of wards. It is going to be the Warriors.
They got more money, though.
But they got more money, means more wards, more sentries, 4 of them in the pockets compared to the 3 the Bolts have. So that's going to help de-ward some of this. And like you said, the vision crucial around this point, especially for picks. If you're talking about the Bolts comp the way you were earlier, picks is where I want to be. But I think you have to pay attention to the player damage specifically. I'm watching Vin, and I'm keeping my eyes on Lasbury. He's at 6,900 right now. We'll see if he can continue that amount, and specifically how much that Vin is going to be able to do throughout all of this.
And Lasbury hits a massive power spike, finishes up that Obsidian Shard. Very expensive build, only 3 items in, but those are 3 massively impactful items. I mean, he is shredding just about anyone, and if he's with Ven, Ven's legitimately shredding them with the Stinger. That is a very potent combo. If Awesome Jake finds a Shadow Lock, I'm not sure if anyone on the Oni Warriors is going to survive it.
Well, Neil Ma lives through that one, so maybe that's just misfortunate timing. Didn't have a lot of follow-up, though. And Neil did take still a good chunk of damage. And that was just a regular volley of abilities coming down from the Bolts. 7-6 for the kills, 25.5 minutes in. That gold lead still hovering at that 5K mark, so it has been stifled by the Bolts. In fact, you can still see it kind of eking its way towards them, very slowly, but it is making its way over there. Pyromancer and Fire Giant are going to be standing over here. Pyro, definitely the one that is more relaxing of the two to lose to the other team. We'll see if anyone starts it up. Jake's getting aggressive, goes for a silence immediately onto Vote, gets the beads early on, takes a lot of damage in the process, and manages to get out with his life, but Cuvo, he might be looking for a little bit more. It doesn't seem like the Warriors want to aggress as hard as I thought.
That is a crazy play from Jake, and it's a massive win for the Olympus Bolts. Taking that beads off of Vote is going to make it much easier to secure that kill a little bit later on. The Oni Warriors, though, do a good deal of damage to Jake. It'll be resustained slowly. Barracuda on this Cupid can heal him up.
Nika is already getting chunked down. I mean, look at the damage done to him. Fire Giant started up. Vote is tanking it. Vote gets rooted in place, and Barracuda gets credit for the kill. And now with Cuvo, Darda separated from the 2 backliners. They're going to be able to find this good CC from Jake again, but it's going to be a turnaround. Good damage from Cuvo Fred, but he's being chased by every single member of the Bolts. Is anyone going to turn around? Look at Neil. Look at Nika. Yes,
Neil.
they are, and they're going to go for it. Haddix is low. Nika jumps in. The knock up, the peel. It's too strong from the Bolts, and they find themselves a second kill.
Nika has to step up there if he's trying to save Neil Ma's life. Once Neil commits the belly flop to make sure Cuvo Fred gets out, that is Neil Ma's life forfeit. Nika, ever the teamman, ever the sportsman, wants to make sure his support makes it out alive, but maybe, Nika, you're worth a little bit more than him. Neil Ma does live, but in trade for the Soul Laner. Now the Olympus Bolts, 5 strong, approach the fire.
Yeah, they took Pyromancer, no problem. Cuvo a little deep in the jungle. They turn their eyes, look at Neil. There's the Intoxicate knock up. No, it's the belly flop. He's going for a little more. Fire Giant half health. They're going to leash that one. Yeah, Lasber's going to let that one fall. Start healing back up. But look at the positioning of the Warriors here, Miff. I mean, this should be Maybe a simple path to try and cut them down. The ult from Cuvo onto Vin, but Vin throws out the honey. He wants the fight, and they're barely going to make it out of that one alive. But Haddix helps him find the kill. Barra finds Neil, and those are huge staggers. A minute without Cuvo, 40 seconds without Neil, and Dardes is stuck between a tier 1 and a tier 2, and, you know, maybe 4 members of the Bolts to boot. That's another kill for him. If you're looking for an FG, you're going to need to heal, but they should be able to find it.
The Oni Warriors have been dragged into the Olympus Bolts pace, kicking and screaming, man. They are conveyor belting their way into these fights.
Wow.
I agree with Neoma in that he has to step up to the Fire Giant. He has to disrupt them, and he does a great job of it. But Cuvo Fred puts himself out of position. Dardes was actually between some towers alone, and the Olympus Bolts crush that aggression. Anytime it's a numbers disparity, 4 versus 2, 3 versus 2, that's going to favor the Olympus Bolts. And I know you wowed it. Those charts are crazy.
Yeah, soul crushing is how I would describe
Oh,
that gold.
man.
Going from 7,000 to none in your favor, that is definitely, I mean, that lives with you. It weighs on your heart. The experience just spikes down. Level 20 for a lot of people. Jake, now 18. They were 15 to 15 just a few seconds ago for the support. So Jake has gotten 3 levels before Neil has been able to pick up a single one. They get the Fire Giant for all 5 members of the Bolts. 29 minutes in, they knock down the tier 2 on right, and they take the gold lead for the first time this game.
And it's a meteoric drop that starts at the 18-minute mark. It's the Oni Warriors who decided 18 minutes in, 8 or 9,000 gold up, nearly 10,000 experience, that they wanted to siege a tier 1 tower. Gotta think they could have allocated that aggression better, because ever since then, the Olympus Bolts have simply been dominating. Tier 2 tower and mid will fall down. Primal Fury will join it shortly, and the Olympus Bolts are making short work of the entirety of the map. And this Fire Giant power play isn't going away anytime soon. They can head back to base, spend that entire massive gold swing in their favor, regroup, and start pushing yet again. No towers standing between the Olympus Bolts and the exposed birds of the Oni Warriors. This is strange grouping, though, from the Warriors. You'd think if you're looking for a 5-on-5, or you're looking to find the Olympus Bolts slacking in the jungle, this is not the side of the jungle that they're going to be on. It's the side furthest from the Fire Giant. Well, maybe they could have caught somebody out, but not the case here. The Olympus Bolts, very safe in their retreat, can now regroup and start their siege in earnest. And their siege is strong. Then, well, with that permanent stim, essentially, with the highs, is going to be able to shred these objectives very quickly. Space control from Barracuda, Fields of Love, a no-play zone, going to force out that entangling wings from Neoma just about every time reactively to make sure that Cupid Ultimate isn't finding value. Can be very nice, and even then, even if you aren't getting value from Fields of Love, Barracuda's just playing a Hunter, so he's going to land auto attacks, double Hunter composition, and Siege. Feels very good, and it's very easy to apply that poke, to apply that pick-style composition when it's just Shadow Lock into 4 dudes, 4 of your teammates standing behind you.
Yeah, it makes things a lot easier for you. They steal away some obelisk offerings and fulfill their own. No one was back there to scoop it up. There's going to be a little bit more gold. The Bolts are able to confirm for themselves. Now, set up on the left side. You have Vin kind of bouncing around in the jungle. Haddix in mid. And everybody else is on this left Phoenix. Just waiting for the go button. Jake's going to walk forward slightly. And I think testing the waters, trying to see what the Warriors' response time is going to be like. This time, he's going to go in a little bit deeper. Has more help from Haddix, and that's the go button. Neil goes in. Neil gets rooted. Neil gets burned in the process. The Bolts get their 1 pick. Cuvo's in the jungle. Might be looking for something. But I think he gets spotted out here. The Bolts still have all the power.
Know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing Lasbra, who still has ultimate and blink available. He could pick somebody all on his own. Blink forward, water spout, crushing wave will remove a priority target from the map. So even if Lasbra has to trade out his life with a double Hunter composition, he's not necessary to finish off these kills.
Trying to get aggressive one more time. Lock up from Jake is good. The Phoenix does fall down. Jake trades out a majority of his health bar in order to get that one. They're going to start swiveling over towards the mid lane for the Bolts. They still have 15 seconds, no Neil to worry about, but it seems like they're going to hit the pause button. 20 seconds left on the power play. That seems to be just too little time for the Bolts to feel confident going in. Next Fire Giant myth is going to spawn in a minute 15. Well, he might not get to see it. They seem to be going deep. They have the wards. No, they call it off. So we will be seeing it, and it is going to be enhanced.
Yeah, Dardes was posturing up to the wave, trying to clear it out, I suppose. Create some space and some time to start to group up around that Fire Giant defense. Again, it's the hardest lane to defend in these Fire Giant dances because it's just the furthest away, like geographically. So, in clearing it early, could have created an opportunity, but maybe Dardez's spider senses start tingling, realizes that they don't have vision on the bolts, and had he stepped up for even one more wave, he would have forfeit his life. So, now the bolts, with 1 minute, 40 seconds rather, till the Fire Giant barrels back down towards the earth, can clear out their own camps, maybe pick up this Pyromancer, and get ready yet again. Those Fire Minion waves, they're going to be working their way towards the base very shortly.
And I feel like, you know, we've had this conversation in the past where we can talk about specifically like teleport, and okay, we'll send whoever can teleport over there to try and clear up and deal with those objectives. Not going to be working out anytime soon for the Warriors, given their relic choices. So who defends? I mean, you can see them. Like they're at the tier 2 line now. They're going to get a little bit closer and closer as the Fire Giant comes to spawning in. Do you just not defend and hope for the 5-on-5?
Well, the 5-on-5 didn't look so good, did it? And the
No.
siege potential of the Olympus Bolts is very strong. They can do a war of attrition if they get Fire Giant just by that HP 5 that you gain from it, but also the healing from Barracuda. And now that it's 33 minutes, it's going to be an enhanced Fire Giant. I agree with the Warriors. You got to defend here.
Neil jumps in. An effective 12,000 gold swing over the last 15 minutes. From 6K up to the Warriors to 6K up for the Bolts. And they've got Fire Minions going into the Titan room. Someone's going to have to deal with them. It's Cuvo Fred they send back. Neil gets silenced out here, rooted down, no big follow-up. Fire Giant kind of poked at by the Bolts, trying to see who's going to take the bait. Nika steps forward. Not enough lockdown on just the solo laner to burn them away. The Bolts aren't getting what they want, so they back up.
Yeah, just keep healing. Keep going for this poke. Keep applying damage to the Oni Warriors. They don't have the same level of sustain in their draft. Sure, Nika can heal you up, but that's in combat healing. The Olympus Bolts have out of combat healing. So if it's always, all right, we're going to poke and then we're going to back up, that is always going to favor the Chaos team here. You see it reflected in the HP. Nobody backed, but it might look like they did.
Yeah, pretty much full health. Lasbar missing a little bit of mana. There's going to be the lockdown onto Neil. Earlier that burned him. This time he manages to escape. That CCR paying dividends right now to make sure he stays alive out of there. Fire Giant started up by the Bolts. Jake goes forward, gets the beads out of Vote, and immediately is trying to chase him down. They get Dardez, they lock him up, and Lasbra burns him down mid laner. Gone for the Oni Warriors, 60 seconds in the grayscale. We'll see how long they decide to keep this up. They go back to the Fire Giant, Mifflin. Jake takes a lot of damage here. Barely escapes this one. Might not even be able to get out of there. Cubo goes deep into the back. It's looking for the kill, but it's the damage onto Cubo. Instead, there's 3. So many low health bars, but he's not going to be able to find one. The Bolts kill him off. They find 2 and lose none.
If Cubo just had a little bit of help back there, that Mantle of Discord stun comes up massive, but not going to be the case. It was a great zone by the rest of the Olympus Bolts, and in doing so, Cubo Fred can spend 50 seconds of the grayscale. Dardez, half a minute himself, and the Bolts can reset and go for the Fire Giant yet again. It's so difficult for the Oni Warriors to engage. We've seen it every time. Neilmod jumps in. He finds a knockup. He's immediately locked down by infinite CC. Jake going to find the Shadow Lock, a cripple afterward. It's been very well played from Vote to use the training exercise to cleanse that CC. That's the main thing keeping Neilmod alive. That's why he's allowed to jump in. But in doing so, Vote misses out on a lot of his potential damage in some of these fights. And now the Olympus Bolts, with enhanced Fire Giant on 5, can start working their way through these birds yet again. The left side Phoenix has respawned, but it is weakened, forever so, until the end of this game. I think we might just see 5 people walk in and focus a bird. You don't have to concern yourself with backdoor protections, so the Olympus Bolts just need the barest of moments alone with the bird. 2, 3, 4 auto attacks from each of these hunters. Well, the bird won't survive.
I was going to say, having 2 hunters at EFG, whew, man, that is tasty if you're a Bolts fan. And probably for the 5 people of the Bolts plus coach. They're going to be very happy with their scenarios as of right now. Speaking of very happy, 6-0-4 for Venenu right now. This AMC has been treating him very well.
Full stop. I mean, yeah, I've got no notes. It's a fail not pickup for Ven, and well, AMC might be one of the best fail not users in the game. Going to get you a lot of great stats, has some CDR on it, has the crit chance, but it's more so what is the combo for AMC. It's always start with the ultimate, so you're always benefiting from the passive of fail not in these team fights. Olympus Bolts will start to work their way down the left-hand side of the map, and We've seen it before. Oni Warriors, they're going in.
Yeah, they're going to try to get aggressive. Vin is the target, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to lock him down. Neil Ma is
Big
going to be
pick.
the one the Bolts are looking at, but they get Barra on the other side, and now the Warriors are looking for more. The damage is going to be there. Lasbra has nowhere to go and gets taken down. Vin left isolated. That 0 turns to
Is
a
that
1,
game?
and they take him down. It is Jake standing with Haddix, trying to find something, and Haddix at least gets a single kill, but he does not have any room to work with. Taken down, double kill for Dardez, and it's Jake while his teammates wait a minute. 3 tier 2s? The Warriors have a lot of work to do, and they don't have enough time to get to the Titan.
No,
Or do they?
Had Haddix not gotten that last kill
They
on
probably
the Cubo
end.
Fred, they probably do end, but a phenomenal individual play from the Soul Laner of the Olympus Bolts will maintain their base this time around. Tier 2 tower will fall, potentially a Phoenix as well, but I don't see a world where the Oni Warriors can actually walk into the Titan room. Jake might not deal a lot of damage, but he can slow you down.
Yeah, he's going to do his best here. Dardez and Vote, especially with minions. Doesn't matter if you have EFG.
Do they go
Going to
for
be
it?
able to
No.
knock that down. Yeah, okay, good. I'm sitting here, like, trying to balance the scales, right? Bear comes up in 4. That's a lot of Titan damage you can get done in 4, but is it enough before he's there, then Lasber, then Vin? Not too much of a cascade from the Bolts that'll be coming in. So they just get the mid Phoenix. The team that got the EFG has the power play technically for another minute and a half, albeit only on Jake.
That's all you
Well,
need.
they're the ones who lose the Phoenix this time around, and the Warriors just gave themselves an excellent win condition.
And the Warriors also get to keep their bird. That left side Phoenix had fallen originally. That is a very, very weak structure for them. And the Oni Warriors did not allow the Olympus Bolts even the opportunity to group up and try and siege in. They took the fight in neutral territory, and the Olympus Bolts just caught with their pants down in that situation. It's going to extend the game, and now the Oni Warriors in a much better position to put up a 5-on-5 engagement. And 39 minutes ago, how we contextualize this match is that Olympus Bolts are the team composition of we need to find picks, whereas the Oni Warriors have a much more standard team comp. It's very much so in favor of the team fight. You've got a great front line. You've got phenomenal range CC lockdown thanks to Grasp of Death. If anyone steps out of line, Cubo Fred can shred their defense similarly to Ven on the other side. This is the first time in probably 15 minutes where we'll see an even engagement. The majority of players are already 6-slotted in their build. The majority of relics upgraded as well. I think Lasbra still waiting on upgrade, the final upgrade for those beads, and a couple of blinks for the Olympus Bolts. The Oni Warriors, they're down 6K, but 40 minutes in, it's not a big deal.
Negative 3,000 gold was the bonus from this power play. Yeah, you can see it there, the negative 2932. So a lot that goes in favor of the Warriors. Those are all Bolt stats. So losing out on a little bit of the lead, they had managed to manifest. And at this point, I mean, look at it. The big difference is going to be in items for supports. You've got upgraded relics all over the place. Missing, well, I guess, a glyph technically there for Lasbury that he can upgrade. And maybe in a couple other places. You already see one there for Barra. So a ton of pressure from the Bolts that just disappears with one great fight from the Warriors. And Mifflin, we're entering, again, we had mentioned this about 20 minutes ago. The ward game, the fight around the Fire Giant for Vision, and how important that's going to be. None in the inventories currently for the Warriors. That's because they're all on the map, and they're trying to maintain this. The Bolts just need a pick. Neil Ba was the original target. He was the guy. But they haven't been able to get him so much.
No, Vote's been doing just such a great job of peeling out for Neil. So instead, maybe you take your attention elsewhere. I think it might come down to, for the Olympus Bolts, Lasbra making an individual play. Blink Ultimate, Blink Crushing Wave can do a lot in these team fights. If Lasbra's willing to trade out his life, might open the door for the Olympus Bolts, because I don't think you can rely on the single target CC of Jake.
Fire Giant has been started up by the Warriors. They're not going for the hard burn, though. They're looking for the bait, and Jake takes it. Goes in too far, takes half his health, but does fall back. Damage from Haddix is going to be good. Nika half health, Vote half as well. They have to fall back here. The Bolts looking for something, surging forward slightly. They're playing it careful, Mifflin. They don't want to overextend. They recognize, much like you said, still not the most comfortable for them. And they have to worry about fire minions there in mid. Cuvo's just hanging out, making sure if anybody decides to take an easy path over there to stop them, they're going to get caught out. And it might be Jake with the positioning they're in right now. Lockdown onto Neil. Cuvo's coming around the corner. Slice and Dice is there, but they're not going to commit any more than that.
Only 2 more fire minion waves that the Olympus Bolts need to concern themselves with in the center of the map, and Haddix doing a good job of holding it down there. The Oni Warriors have got the opportunity to fight their way back forward, reestablish vision control, and force the Olympus Bolts to fight in to the defensive positioning. That is the weakness of this Bolts draft. This is a great scenario for the Oni Warriors, but not so much so that they could just pull the fire.
Well, Haddix, Cuvo in a 1v1 in mid right now. Cuvo's getting the better end of that, but we'll see how long that ends up lasting.
Soul
There was a
Eater.
little skirmish around the FG, and like you said, Soul Eater helping out a little bit there. Neil gets locked down, and lucky for him is able to slip on out of there before anything serious can happen. Jake's still fishing for something, though. He's going to blink forward, goes immediately onto Vote, gets the beads, and now is trying to get things started. Good grasping death from Dardes, locks up Jake and keeps him there, but he's tanky enough that he's withstanding a majority of this. Does dash away. The Bolts don't get their pick, but they don't lose anyone either.
I think it was a 3-man ultimate from Jake, stripping away all that damage from the Oni Warriors. If he only connects with 2, he might have lost his life. Also, Lono's Mask putting in a good deal of work to make sure Jake does survive in that scenario, and the Olympus Bolts win out on that team fight pretty handily, I'd say. Dardes' ultimate, very important for the Oni Warriors securing these kills. It's been Grasp with SCC, locking down Lazaro, locking down Ven. That's where the Oni Warriors have been finding their wins, and in losing that does open the door for the Olympus Bolts to try and get aggressive yet again, only trading out their support's ultimate. I'm still keeping my eyes on Lazaro, man. This Habois, it feels like just one play could really just open up the game.
It's that weird, again, duality of man that is Habois. Sometimes he's just gonna die, and he's gonna die fast.
Quickly.
Man, if he hits you just with a volley of abilities, 2 of them, all of a sudden your health is just gone. It's eviscerated. So you have to keep watching. Lasbra, big playmaker. Run to the Hebrew skin as well. Gonna give him shout-outs for that one. Neilma jumps in, gets the stun, and this is going to be part of that duality. A lot of damage onto Lasbra immediately, but it's gonna be a split fight. Vote is taken down solo, but no one's found the last hit. Dardes and him are barely alive, and the carries for the Warriors are gonna go down. Lasbra manages to live through this. They lose Bara, but the damage from the Hebrew is massive as he gets a double with his ult. They chase down Nika. Who needs the Fire Giant? Just run it down, take the Titan, and take game number 1 for the Bolts.
The Olympus Bolts from the brink. The Oni Warriors had pushed them to the edge at the 18-minute mark, and since then the Olympus Bolts were making an uphill climb, and they are successful in doing so. That was not an easy match by any stretch of the imagination. Just superior picks, man. And once the Oni Warriors were on the back foot, once they were reeling, the Olympus Bolts never allowed them to recollect themselves.
Now Titan, at this point, just the formality of ending the game. The Bolts, Mifflin, a 12K gold swing, 6K from the Warriors, back over to 6K for the Bolts, and then a couple of fumbles. Things did not go well and cleanly for them there. They had an EFG at one point, and things felt like it was going to be swimming, done in 34, and then all of a sudden, all but one of them die, and they slow things down. Phoenix goes down. They dance around the FG. A lot of awkward plays there for the Bolts. Maybe not as clean as they wanted, but they fought back in what felt like a very oppressive situation to get there.
Yeah, if that's the Bolts in a worst-case scenario, you got to think in an even state, they're feeling pretty good, right? That is a crushing loss for the Oni Warriors. But if history's any indicator, if Game 1's any indicator for the rest of this set, I think there's going to be one true winner at the end of the day. That's us, the viewers.
Oh, I was like, yes, that's how this works. One team wins, the other doesn't,
Well,
then
yeah,
they move up in
I
the
was
standings.
doing like this poetic
But
thing.
yeah, like we get to, because we're watching it, it's like
Yeah, and
way
it's
cooler
fun.
for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and it sounds like you did until I did the thing there. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully I didn't ruin the other 40 minutes of gameplay
No,
for
it's
you.
okay.
Hopefully you enjoyed it, the 40 minutes that come through for the Bolts on top. We're going to break that down, move into game number 2 right after this.
Blessings upon you.
Oh, hey, fam. This is gonna be fun.
The party's this way.
I'll cut you down.
Going up.
You're welcome.
No, brother!
Betray your brothers.
Free your souls! Ignite!
fourth game that we have here to start out between the Olympus Bolts and the Warriors. The Warriors start out with a massive 6,000+ gold lead, and then 20 minutes in, the Olympus Bolts decided, hey, it's time for us to play. And they took the 6,000 away and then went 6,000 to them. And then we just still continued this back and forth game all the way up into the end. Trelly, this one is a difficult one because it comes down to, we talked about team fight versus late game more than anything out of this composition. Once we did get to that late game, though, as you called, the Olympus Bolts had a very hard scaling draft.
Right. I mean, you did draft the double ADC, obviously, with the AMC and the Cupid. You have a Hebo and the jungle, and surprisingly, this is the first time we've really seen this Nox support kind of carry its own weight here. So the whole comp sort of came together for these late game T-fights. I mean, anytime you have a double ADC comp, your carries are specifically going to have a lot of weight to carry because you have to deal with these tanks, but you're going to be able to shred so much easier.
Yeah, Veneno up over on this AMC. Again, a pick that we didn't really see much in this first month or so of competitive play since we came back between the play-ins of the SPL, the SCC, even SCC. Nobody was really looking over towards this AMC. But Veneno was able to make it work out here in game number 1. Him and Laz were really picking up the big hits at the very end of the game here. But going back over to this Nox, I mean, in the set that we had earlier on with the Leviathans, it really wasn't able to get maximum value out. We haven't really seen a whole lot of it. Usually it is that hard counter pick, usually up against gods like Iset that we saw all the way back at Worlds. But Jake really getting a lot of value, especially in these late game fights.
Yeah, even against the Bacchus, canceling out that burp in lane specifically is always going to be a good time. But Jake hitting those shadow locks, making sure to set up for his team with a huge crushing wave by Lasbro here to set up the end of this game. But making sure to hit those shadow locks, that sort of lockdown, even the ultimates themselves to peel for his team. All of these just really coming into fruition and making sure to set up his squad for victory there.
Look at these last like 3 items here on a lot of these frontliners and carries on the side of the Bulls. Triple Mantle of Discord, just to really show how much of a threat the Oni Warriors team was. And as we started kicking and screaming in towards the latter half of the game, all of those mantles were able to get not just the extra CDR, those protections to help them out here. Dardes topping the damage charts as far as his team is concerned. Haddock's on the opposite side. This cleanup, I mean, it was something that we looked at, especially in those last little team fights there around those fire giants. Haddock's only had 2 damage items, but he was slamming constant damage across the board against the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, that Bluestone Brooch, Soul Eater, and then Brawler's Beat Stick. That's pretty much all you really need on this cleanup. The Whales just coming through, Tear the Veil, specifically that ability is going to chunk, and then the slows, you get it up so much as well. The cooldown is not too long, obviously having 2 charges of it, so it's always going to be very difficult to deal with.
Game number 1 is done, which means we jump into game 2. Picks and bans are ready to go here between the Oni Warriors and the Olympus Bolts. And Charlie, I'll pose the question to you. In a game like this, where the Warriors are leading for the first half of it, and then they just end up faltering at a couple little team fights here, do you make draft adjustments for yourself, or do you try and make changes to what the Bolts are able to draft up here?
I would say the draft adjustments is one way to look at it, but honestly, they had that early lead, right? I think as long as you don't let this double ADC with a Hebo comp get online to that late game, even that, would have been enough, I'd say. So right now, the Oni Warriors need to say, number 1, was that Hebo too much to deal with? Because late game, those massive crushing waves were just, too much to deal with, obviously. So was that the issue? Or was it more so our play style, how we handled our early game? We didn't, push the envelope a little bit enough. So that's going to be really where I think it's going to differ for the Oni Warriors.
A bit of a rough patch there in game number 1 for the Warriors, but their bans are going to stay the same, at least as of now. Erlong Shen and Zeus on the side of the Oni Warriors. Olympus Bolts won't change up anything. Kabrakan and Da Ji. But one thorn in the side of the Oni Warriors was that Nox. They're going to take that one away from Jake and force him onto something new. And when it came to those late game team fights, that really did come down to a core problem. I mean, Neil tried to step up at a Phoenix. He got rooted in place and just died instantly. Fire Giants, we saw that time and time again, especially between Nika and Neil. Anytime they stepped up towards Jake, he was able to lock them down.
Yeah, I mean, usually you see this Nox pick, and it's either the first one to die or the first one to go in. That really the first target in all these fights. But Jake, as we've said, has been able to find a lot of appeal, specifically this Nox pick, just a lot of lockdown. It's hard to push into a Nox, even if you just can't cast your abilities. Even if that Shadow Lock does not land, the AoE silence is going to be super annoying to try to deal with. So I definitely see why the Oni Warriors just said, hey, let's take that away. We want to be able to flop freely in lane if we get that bot, because we want to be able to die without having to deal with this massive silence.
We do have a Khepri ban as the last one for the Bolts. And the next big adjustment here out of the Warriors is going to be taking Haddox off the Kleena. Instead of going over to the Bolt solo laner, that one will now go towards the side of the Oni Warriors. Still some options to whether that one does go solo like we saw in game number 1, or in jungle like we saw in set number 1 of our day. But that gives it over to the Olympus Bolts now to make some adjustments. Now that they are 2 gods down, their quote-unquote frontliners have been taken away from them. So where does the option now go, Trelly?
Well, obviously the Bolts, again, opt to ban this Daji, so that tells me they're trying to draft into that specific character, like, the Cupids and the AMCs, these characters that could get pulled by the Pala very easily. But now you don't have the Nox, so you're losing a little bit of that magic damage. You still could have the possibility of that Hebo jungle that Lasper played, but right now you have to get Haddix on a new pick. So they're gonna prioritize this Camazot. Still could be flexing. Is it in the solo lane? Is it in the jungle? That's still to be decided, but they're trying to, sort of adapt to the way the Oni Warriors are taking away 2 of their picks thus far, the Kleena and the Nox.
Yeah, double flexibility between these 2 assassins, whichever it ends up going into jungle or solo. Medusa, though, locked in on the side of the Olympus Bolts. Been talking time and time again about the level of pressure that this god is able to put out there in the lane specifically. We talked about how Crusher, it has become like one of the #1 items to pick up on this god just because of how much value she gets out of it. So that's going to give pressure in that dual lane no matter what. The question now goes over to the Oni Warriors is what do you draft in response to deal with the pressure of a Medusa?
I'm just curious if Barracuda is going to be going for the same sort of style of build like he went last game. This full sort of ability-based penetration build on Cupid. It's going to work pretty similarly on Medusa. They both have a little bit of auto attack stems in their own right, where Cupid gets it from upgrading his dash, and Medusa just has the Viper shot, which is going to be crazy amounts of attack speed. So if this sort of ability-based Medusa build would come out, there's definitely a possibility for that. And we haven't even touched on the fact that we've seen Medusa mid at least once, so there could be a chance that they could be flexing that again. We just saw Ven piloting that AMC, of course, so there still seems to be a couple different options here, but now we have the Oni Warriors who are going to be drafting Gilgamesh and the Morgan. The Morgan has some great transformations on the map right now. Obviously, Camazotz is the look-to right away, that bat out of hell. Such a good engage and disengage tool for the Morgan, a very safe transformation.
Yeah, with how bruisery this god has been built as well, it could be that optimal target. Gilgamesh also a solid transformation if you want a second wind, an extra set of CC with that drop kick there. So now the question goes over to the Bolts as to what they want to grab here before the second phase. And it is going to be some frontline drafted out here. Horus locked in for the boys in yellow. Going over towards that support role gives something different now to Jake. We saw Horus earlier on in our day in that very first set here. And how do you kind of feel about Horus making his way back into the support role?
I think Horus right now has a very solid spot in just getting your duo lane ahead. He's going to pretty much out-pressure all of these frenzy-popping Guardians that want to get really aggressive because Fracture is just such a strong level 1 ability. I mean, Horus can dash in, stun, get that big sweep off, and then you have all this sort of aggression, especially if you do the start where your ADC gets level 2. A level 2 Medusa being set up by a Horus, that's going to bring so much pressure. So right now, Jake obviously can't do the run back on the Nox, so just getting this Horus, getting the same sort of early pressure. Obviously, Nox doesn't have as much early, but Horus, though, that's going to be pretty difficult to deal with, especially with the Medusa acid spray in the back.
Well, much like us, how we aren't fully convinced where this Camazotz is going, the Oni Warriors are not either. They'll ban away the RTO, at least to get a little bit of safety and take one of the top Guardians in that lane off the map here. Geb and Fafnir once again here by the Olympus Bolts. It's always interesting seeing this Geb have a kind of a priority ban up here, whether it be just a ban up against Neil Moss specifically, or a ban like we talked about in game #1 where it's good against a certain pick like the Nox, things like Fenrir as well, where it's a real strong up against. Speaking of Fenrir, with all the changes that we've seen to him, we actually don't even see him banned or even looked at yet here in this second game.
Yeah, I still think the full-powered jungle Fenrir, we're not going to see too much of. It's just so difficult to really get a full brutalize off. We see, this auto-attack Fenrir that's coming out as well, but if you are going to be drafting Fenrir just to build auto-attack, why not just pick some of these other jungles, like Gilgamesh, for example, that has these great, auto-attack-centric builds that you can't opt to go for. And it looks like the Bolts are going to be drafting the Agni in this spot. Pretty decent range against a pick like the Morgan, just keeping her at bay. Lots of space control with those meteors and the nauseous fumes. So Ven is going to be very safe in this mid lane against that Morgan. Is trying to figure out where she is in stealth specifically.
Well, it will not be a Medusa mid today, Charlie. Instead, it will be Agni locked in for the Olympus Bolts. And that now puts the final options over to the Warriors. We're looking at the Bacchus one more time for Neil. And then currently the Chernobog being hovered here. The Bacchus into Nox wasn't a great matchup for the Bacchus specifically. You talk about just because of the lockdown, the silence that she has. How does the Bacchus up against Horus match go, though?
I mean, same sort of style. If you're going to lead with this frenzy burp start, something along those lines, you're going to be getting fractured, stunned out. The burp is going to be just stunned out, and you can't really get that stun off. But on the flip side, you could just opt to start for the belly flop and jump over it. There is a little bit more counterplay. It's not a silence, right? It's not an AoE silence that you put on the floor that you can't do anything about. There is a little bit more that Bacchus can do into Horus specifically, and obviously with a little bit extra tank stats, I think that Neil's going to be sitting a little bit prettier in this lane now that there isn't that big silence we've been talking about. But I think this is a Poseidon jungle. I really think Lasba right now is just feeling these mages.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing a lot of these mage jungles pop in. The most kind of traditional one that we're more familiar with is the Ao Kuang. But I mean, you go well back into the day where we had Habwa kind of be one. Poseidon has been rising up here. We've been seeing a lot of popularity with this god going towards the jungle, even junglers going towards mid, like Captain Twig, for an example, really liked playing this god as well. So there's just something about this god that junglers really have a knack for out here.
I will say that, again, I have to go back to this tier list I was talking about with Ben because he spoke of a little bit of a strat here with the Poseidon. You go Eye of the Jungle, you max the 2 specifically. Now you just are moving. The cooldown goes down when you put points into the Trident. You're zooming all over the map. Then you don't have to use your abilities to clear the wave all the time and your camp specifically. So you just pop your 2 on a speed camp. You still have your abilities up if you want to peel for yourself or have that cripple with the Whirlpool. This Poseidon jungle with a Doom Orb is going to be zooming across the map.
And Poseidon did get a little bit of a buff this last patch, had some mana cost reductions to his second ability, that Trident, and as well his ultimate has been reduced in cost across the board. So maybe that little bit is just enough for this god to squeak his way up here into popularity for some of these players. But from one water god to another, now we'll see how Lasbra can pan himself here with this Poseidon. Looking at these drafts holistically, again, I'll pose the question once more. Now we have a little bit more direct front line when we're looking at something like Horus compared to the Nox or the Kleena out here. How do you feel about the Bolts draft here in game number 2?
I do like what they're going for here, but again, it does look like a lot of single target damage. I'm imagining a fracture into a Kraken, right? A stun into all this sort of setup. But you do have these big team fight ultimates as well. Again, the Kraken can be used to hit multiple targets as well as Petrify. Bat out of Hell is always going to be super difficult to deal with if you are a carry because there's no sort of self-peel for that. You just have to sit there and take it, or Aegis. So I think if the Bolts play the same sort of style where they're letting Jake, set up for them and or peel and they follow up with that, I like what they are doing with this draft here.
Well, one of the big problems in game number 1, at least for the Warriors, is once they got to that 20-25 minute mark, it then pivoted over to the Olympus Bolts, able to get these little picks out here. What's that pivot point for the Warriors to not falter here in game number 2? What's that win condition for them, Trelly?
Well, I will say the Oni Warriors are not fighting in a double carry any longer. They just have to worry about the Medusa for that sort of auto-attack shred, obviously. So I think they have a pretty solid late game in their own right. They could just use the Morgan to turn into any sort of pick they really need. For the safety, obviously, you go with the Cannons. That's like you mentioned, they could have 2 wins of Shamash. That's going to be super difficult to deal with. So I think their late game is pretty solid. They have a pretty much all-in dive comp, right? You could Chernabog ult for the global presence and then just go in as well as you want to.
Well, we'll see if the Oni Warriors can bring it back here in game number 2, or the Olympus Bolts going to sweep this one away. We're going to take it right into game number 2 to see what breaks down.
We'll see whether or not they can take this one in 2. The Warriors have something a little more interesting for us in store. It's Goran Myth one more time. It's Mifflin. It is absolutely not only Doug with us, but Poseidon in the jungle. One of those is a given.
What?
The other one is still just baffles me. Which one are you confused about?
The segue.
Oh.
Not only joined by Doug, but also Poseidon the jungle. I don't know. You caught me off guard. What was the question?
Poseidon in the jungle.
Yeah.
I said it baffles me.
Okay.
Which opens the floor for you to just talk about it and however
understood.
you want. If you want, I can ask a pointed question.
No.
Okay.
Those are. I might cut myself on those. That's a no
yeah,
laugh for
because
that.
it's pointed.
Yeah. Thank you. So like Poseidon jungle is incredibly strong in that it is able to rotate throughout the map very quickly. It's something that Charlie touches on lightly in that it's just a whole lot of movement speed from the Trident, and that's why junglers are starting to gravitate a little bit more so towards this pick, because what is it that junglers love, Gore?
Farm kills.
It's going fast. It's the
going
speed
fast.
buff,
Zoom
right?
in.
Yeah. He gets that
He
just
gets-
by
he gets
nature
some
of
mad
existing,
zoomies.
right? Like he can start moving around very quickly. It's a very easy to execute gank.
You just roll up. If you have Kraken, it generally is going to work out. You're at least forcing out some Aegises. I didn't get a chance to look at the relics just yet because of that chaotic start, but could be that we just see a lot of early Aegises picked up here.
Third thing junglers like, ganking Zapman. That's a big one.
Yeah.
A lot of junglers like doing that one. It's been successful for them. I mean, it's interesting because, like you said, we have seen a lot of this Poseidon jungle where it's this speed buff. You pop your 2, you are on right lane, all of a sudden you're somehow crackening this guy in left, and it feels like it happens almost instantaneously. Something I think needs to be worried about for the Warriors. Downside, you're a mage.
Yes.
You don't have a leap.
Wait, why is being a mage a downside?
Because you're a little more magical heavy in your damage.
Yeah, mages do magic damage. I'm with you, Gore.
I don't know. Assassins do better in their physical, so there you go.
They just do blanket statement.
In jungle, they do better. Right now, a Freya jungle used to be a thing.
And that's the only time.
And that's the only
Gore,
time.
you are on one today.
You're just
man.
not. Why are you grilling me?
Well, because I'm
on
listening to what you're
specific
saying.
Okay, well, don't do that.
I'm
You don't do
interacting
that.
with it. Okay.
Ignore what I'm saying and listen to Mifflin. He said, do Poseidon. He goes Zumi.
No, that was you as well. But
No, I'm pretty sure I'm just paraphrasing what you said.
Okay, sure. Reroute us, Gore. Get us back in the conversation.
All right, 45 seconds into the game. Bolts here have locked in. Again, a Poseidon jungle, which is maybe worth mentioning. Horus going into the duo lane. Kraken's always worth talking about when it comes down to this, but a lot of CC on their side. Other side, Mifflin, you've got a Gilgamesh that has treated them very well. You've got Bacchus, which Neil has been playing incredibly well. Vote on the Chernobog with a global presence. And, of course, the Morrigan in mid lane with a lot of tasty transformations through here. It feels like the Warriors get a very comfortable composition.
Yeah, this is a draft that I think the Warriors are going to be very happy to play similarly to how we saw in Game 1 in that they can establish early pressure, namely through Cuvo, Fred, and Neoma. Both gods, Bacchus and Gilgamesh, are very adept at getting involved early on in the game. It's just whether or not they're able to transition that. That's where we saw them blunder, if you would, in Game 1. So whether or not they could reestablish a lead, that's the first hurdle. And secondly, it's what are you able to do with it? Whereas on the other hand, I would argue the Olympus Bolts have a composition that is much better in the early portion of the game this time around. Lasbra, once he takes over to level 5, is going to be a massive threat on the map. Haddix is very safe on the Kamazots, and I don't need to sing the praises of Agni for anyone who's been watching the SCC recently or any competitive Smite that's happened so far this year, but I will in case they haven't.
Exactly.
That god is really good. With the new build pass available to him, with some of the changes that Agni has received, the ultimate now costs a little bit of mana, so you can go for the Archmage path if you so choose. Not the case this time with Sands of Time, but also just really, really gets that damage online much more quickly. The Rainfire, just a great poke tool in some of these fights.
There's a little bit of a stun. An interesting duo lane matchup. I think that'll exist here between the Horus and the Bacchus, the setup they have, and the damage potential that each lane is capable of. But healing, you can see it a little bit there from Jake, is probably going to be feeling pretty prominent here. You had mentioned level 5. I'm going to hold that thought. It's going to be Neil. Good stun for the peel. And again, a little bit of anti-heal on that stun. Only matters right now in the direct matchup, helping quell some of that Horus. But it is something that is going to stop Jake from being able to run the show.
You know, also knock-up immunity when you're belching, so updraft from Horus, not really going to be the easiest to apply there. We even saw immediately off of Fracture, the stun was not quite quick enough to find the knock-up. Neilma able to respond in turn and turn that fight around a little bit. Had the knock-up come through, we might have been talking about First Blood immediately in the duo lane. I am curious about some of these relic decisions, though. Neilma goes for Blink very early on, tells me he's trying to close gap consistently, maybe worried about that additional movement speed that a Poseidon has out of the jungle, or the survivability of an Agni with that dash. But gotta think that maybe like a team fight relic could have served him very well. We'll see right here.
There's going to be beads from Barra, immunes the stun, and a good dash gets him just out of the reach of the belly flop there. Cuvo looking for a gank. But he's not going to be able to find anything. Jake sees him. He at least should spot him out. Maybe not going to be able to get anything done over there. I'm keeping my eyes. Lasbra, you called it out. Level 5 going to be a big deal. He was going towards mid. Unfortunately, ran face first into Dardez, and Dardez just decided to not take that fight. So no big explosion happening there. And Mifflin, now that he's level 5, I mean, this is where you kind of highlighted that this Poseidon can start to get more aggressive. But there's the question. You know, Cuvo's gone for Blink. Typically, we get to see Blinks, things like that, out of junglers. Usually, you can either do Blink and then something else aggressive, or Blink and then something to protect you. And sometimes, and most of the time, that ends up being beads. It's immediately into the beads for Lasbra. Probably necessary, again, because of the whole mage kit thing that he's got going on for him. Not necessarily because he's magical.
But
it
he
can
is
happen to
magical
anybody. He
by
does
nature
just
of a
happen
mage.
to be magical. It's just that his kit doesn't enable him the way that others do. Is this beads necessary to you? Like, do you think Lasbra had to have this, or could he have risked something else?
I think beads is the right decision. When you've got a Gilgamesh on one side, dropkick being one of the longest duration stuns
I did kind of forget
rank
about
one.
dropkick.
Dardes combo, you want to be able to immune that one, usually starting off with a stun. Even immuning a burp could be pretty massive as Lasbra takes a good deal of damage early. Doug, can we get a look at the level order from Cuvo Fred? Looked like that dropkick just did a whole lot of damage there. Nope, it's the Sunstar Scimitar. That's just the base rank 1 dropkick that did upwards of like 10 to 15% of Lasbra's HP bar. That said, look at the relics. It's something we talked about during the pause briefly. I thought maybe we'd see a lot more Aegis selections for the Oni Warriors to deal with the Kraken from Lasbra. And there is an Aegis, but for Nika out of the Soul Lane, Nika concerned, I'm sure, about the ability for Lasbra to just walk over and very easily gank Aklina, as she really only has that dash to escape out. And, well, there's a cripple on Whirlpool, or if you try to escape into a wall, makes it pretty easy for him to line up the Kraken. So maybe we don't see Lasbra rotate there too often, but otherwise, Dart has no traditional leap or dash, only has beads. That's a place you can find some Krakens pretty consistently. Or even Chernobog on the other side of the map. I'm excited to see when and where Lasbra decides to get aggressive.
And beads, no Aegis for those. Aegis popular against Kraken because of what it can bring, but they're not going to be able to have that here, at least not yet. I keep anticipating a little bit more happening for the Bolts, but they're playing this one calmly as of right now. Haddix is trying to play it safe and, well, just alive. He's going to be able to make it out of there. Bat out of hell does its work, but Nika, absolute menace with the amount of damage that he was able to do. And he was the one who was playing Bastet solo towards the end of Season 8, now playing this Klina. It fits hand in hand with how much damage we got to see him do.
Yeah, and once he finishes up stacking that Soul Eater, he's going to get a lot more power available to him, as well as that ability Lifesteal to match up some of the sustain that Haddix just has hard baked into the kit, thanks to Vampiric Bats and Devour, the third ability. But doesn't really seem to need that Lifesteal just yet, does he? Nika getting the better end of that engagement very handily, and already starting to get some of that power online. I think we might see Nika try and make some rotations as well relatively early on. He doesn't have the greatest kill presence in the Soul Lane. I know that it doesn't seem that way, considering Haddix was forced to use that ultimate defensively, but that is why Bat Out of Hell is just a great defense tool.
Well, Jake, as well as Vin and Lasbra, drop deep into the jungle. They're looking for something. Dardes transforms into the Kamazats. They're chasing down Lasbra. The Kraken is not going to connect here, and he's too low. There's going to be a kill picked up for the Warriors, but not before Vote fell on the other side of the map. Now Jake low has to get out of here. Seems to be 1-for-1. Vin trying to stay alive. Belly flop, gonna get beads out, but now he's susceptible to any stuns, and Neil is gonna deliver. Cuvo gets the kill, and it's a 2-1 split for the Warriors.
Yeah, Barracuda soloed out Vote, by the way. That was not a team fight split for the Olympus Bolts. That was just on the opposite side of the map, where the Medusa got the better end of this Chernobog. But that is so tough, man. Ven finds like a 4-man stun over the wall, lands 3 bombs on at least 3 targets, but just not enough survivability there once the beads was forced out. Very easy for him to turn around that engagement.
The most important thing about this, Mifflin, not the solo kill aspect, although that probably is a little bit. I want to give him the credit because he stripped First Blood away from what otherwise would have been a Warrior's First Blood, so at least saving the Bolts there. And he just kind of played it clean. I mean, nothing crazy happened there. He just kind of did it to him.
No, I was expecting like the standard Lacerate Viper Shot combo, but it wasn't even that. Just takes the boxing match very easily up against Vote. Does not miss a single auto attack and was able to turn around that fight just cleanly for Barracuda. Props to me for picking him up. That guy's on my fantasy team.
I was wondering, if you were going to try to worm that in. I think First Blood does get bonus points, too. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look. But if it does,
let's go, Bera.
If it does, then good for you. If it doesn't, then it probably should, right? So realistically, something interesting here for Bera. And a good start for him. What, half a level, let's call it right now, over where we see Vote. And potentially just causing a little bit of trouble for Neil. Jake here and Vin here? I don't know. It feels like the Bolts might have wanted to turn that. Well, hold on. Jake wanted to turn that into a little bit more. I don't think anybody else was on the same page. It is, though, Mifflin, and this is what happened last time, a small separation in gold. It was 2,004 minutes in for the Warriors in game number 1. Nowhere near that this time around. 1,300, though, at 9 minutes approaching the 10-minute mark. They've got at least something to control this game a little bit.
Yeah, they do, but how are they going to root their aggression? Where are they going to land it? Because you don't really want to play through mid with a non-standard mage like the Morgan at this portion of the game, so I'm expecting the Oni Warriors likely to play elsewhere.
I thought maybe something big happening here. Stun against the wall on Jake, and the damage is good, but not good enough. He walks away, maintains his life. Lasbra is who I want to zone in on, though, because throughout a lot of this conversation, specifically earlier, you were saying that you thought that maybe the Bolts could control some of this early game a little bit better than the Warriors. Now, Lasbra was mentioned. One Kraken, we've seen it miss. Hasn't really been as proactive as I think either of us expected.
Yeah, Cuvo Fred still even with Lasbra, so not the biggest steal here. Both junglers level 10 at this point. Surprised to see Lasbra go towards some utility in the second slot with a silver breastplate, likely going to be the breastplate of Valor. That's a good deal CDR. You've already got a great power infusion from Doomore, but you are really delaying the penetration in your build. And considering the pacing of it, you probably don't get pen online until third item at the earliest. That's generally when people are going to start ticking over towards level 12 and get that Aegis available to them. So the opportunity to go onto Dardes, who had picked up beads in the first slot, that's lost. You're not able to do that anymore because he's got Aegis for himself. You've also already had Aegis on Nika. Could pretty much expect an Aegis pickup for Vote on this back as well. It's going to be a lot harder for Lasbra to find those opportunities.
Yeah. Disappearing right in front of their eyes. I do think he has a small lead over Kivo, though. He was ticked to 11 while Kivo was still 10. I expect we'll see him hit 12. So farm game has been on point for Lasbra, despite whether or not that is translated into the KDAs, the 1-0-1 versus the 0-1-0. And yeah, there's that level 12 mark for him, so he'll be able to get his second relic online now. It is a little bit of a gap in mid right now. We might have to think about that in a little bit, though, Jake. Stunned against the wall. It turns out it's just Kivo here. Not a lot that's going to be going on. But this Agni fell behind, I think, quicker than anybody wanted.
Yeah, no, you don't expect
Except
Agni
for
to
Dardes.
lose pressure. Yeah, or the whole of the Oni Warriors are probably pretty happy with that. But that is not a matchup that you expect an Agni to lose out on like this. It really does come down to that pick on that right side jungle where the Oni Warriors got aggressive. And that was a fight that the Olympus Bolts chose. And remember that it was them drop shipping into the back camps of the Oni Warriors. And the fight ends in the Olympus Bolts tier 2 tower in the solo lane, essentially. And since then, Ven has just been playing the catch-up game on the map. Chronos Pennant finished up. So he's going to have a good deal of CDR, already has Sands of Time, so we're talking about 30% in the build, and then the passive from Chronos means that these bombs are going to be constant for the Olympus Bolts, but maybe sacrificing a little bit of power and damage at this portion of the game, whereas Dardes, on the other hand, has picked up Doom Orb, and that's a lot of power immediately for this Morgan, and with a level lead, has an advantage in that I think that Dardes can really start playing that solo agent role that you associate with the Morgan, where she essentially becomes a magical assassin and can start working her way into these behind the fights or trying to get into the backliner herself. She's got great transformation targets that are incredibly tanky as well.
Bera, Vote in a 1v1. Man, I thought there was going to be so much more, but Vote plays it safe. Kind of, I think, flashbacks to how First Blood happened. Still only 3 kills here, 13 minutes in. And they're keeping it just over a 1K gold lead in favor of the Warriors. No Gold Fury has been pulled. And I think that is where we start to look at the next, few minutes, specifically around that Gold Fury. Mifflin, I see Kraken on board. I give 2 thumbs up to the team that has it when it comes to objective secure. And I think that's going to be a big one for the Bolts. That potential to burn this down and secure it specifically with Lasbra. They seem to be on the exact same page. 13.5 minutes in, they're going to pull the Gold Fury. It doesn't seem like any of the Warriors are the wiser.
No, that is a free objective. Lots of ultimate used. Not sure any of them were necessary.
You'll get
the Olympus
the
Bolts.
Meteors back fast.
Yeah, you'll get the Meteors back fast, and he'll get the Kraken back fast because of Breastplate of Valor, but the Olympus Bolts had complete vision coverage around the Gold Fury, so they would have known if any Oni Warriors were going to show up. But you see it reflected in the charts. Gold has been effectively cut to 500. Experience, though, still largely in favor of the Oni Warriors. 2K at the 14-minute mark is nothing to scoff at. Seems like it is still primarily in the mid lane, maybe a little bit in the solo lane as well for Nika. The Olympus Bolts, though, I think they could just lean back for a little while.
Oh, they're not going to. They're going to try to get something going for them. Neil's so low, but they're not able to confirm the kill. He's bouncing away. Haddix is here, though. He leaps forward. Good blink from Neil. Gets him out of there. Great drop kick from Cuvo. Finds the CC to make sure Haddix can't continue the chase. And that slows down what was some aggression from the Bolts, although it was really just punishing Neil for being near their red buff. Now things are up in the air, Mifflin. You get a little bit of a pullback in favor of the Bolts because of the Gold Fury. And outside of, like you said, a little bit of experience, realistically mainly in mid, pretty much an even game 15 minutes in.
Yeah, Neil was surprisingly tanky there. I was wondering what he was building. Spirit Robe in that second slot. So every time you're affected by CC, you're going to get a little bit more protections for yourself. And anytime anyone from the Olympus Bolts is fighting you, you are likely to be affected by CC. Awesome Jake's engagement, Ven's stun from a range. Even the Kraken, I believe the Spirit Robe will apply that defense before the damage. Thanks to that stun if you get hit by the center of the Kraken. So Neilma going to be very, very hard to shut down at this point, whereas Awesome Jake, on the other hand, goes for utility in the second slot. Relic Dagger picked up. He's going to be blinking a lot more often than we'll see from Neil.
That is something that I feel like we used to see a lot of Relic Dagger. It was like towards the end of Phase 1, maybe middle of Phase 1 last year, and a lot in Season 7. But it definitely took a backseat through the duration of the year. If that Lacerate connects, there might be a kill onto Vote. There might still be one. Jake goes for the blink, gets the beads out of Vote here. And on the left-hand lane, they're just going to heal up back away, taking that as a big win for themselves. But Mifflin, you know, it's this, I believe even nerfed coming into Season 9, you're not getting as much cooldown reduced off of your relics from the Relic Dagger. A lot of good health on it, but not as many prots, I think, for Jake. He's getting it just from the Thebes here. So maybe a little easier to burn down than the Bacchus.
Significantly easier at the current portion of the game. And Bacchus still is one of the tankiest late-game Guardians, thanks to Chug, giving him even more protection. Spirit Robe going to give you more than a Relic Dagger at the current portion of the match. But I'm not concerned with Awesome Jake. He's got a lot of survivability, just essentially a double dash, the heal dash, as well as Fracture, if he finds himself in a sticky situation, and CC immunity in the ultimate to make sure that really it is difficult to shut him down.
Ooh, Jake gets locked up here. You can see maybe some of the lack of tankiness immediately into the mobility you were just highlighting. Perfect timing for that to get out of there. Vin, there was a Meteor out there, gets some damage, but no big stuns, no big setup. Pyromancer is right there. And it seems tantalizing, but with all the numbers that are over here, unless they want a big fight, doesn't seem like anyone's going to start it up. Remember, the Kraken, as long as that diamond next to Lazarus' name is full, I have to give them advantage on securing objectives as long as he times it properly. And so that is going to be something that the Warriors have to factor in whenever they're taking fights around Fire Giant, Pyromancer, wherever it happens to be.
Gore, it's a bit that I had introduced to you recently in Dave's absence.
Yeah.
Let's play the game of the low kill game.
Oh, yeah.
Who's the next guy to die? Chat, feel free to participate. Just type whoever you think it is that's going to die next.
And then type 1 if you think I'm right and 2 if you think Mifflin's right. So, like, if our names...
But they would just type whoever we say.
Yeah, I guess their name counts.
Yeah, we would just know.
Yeah, but I wanted Morse fail.
Okay, cool.
So it was fun for that.
Who's your pick?
Next to die?
Yes.
And it's anybody in the game.
Anybody in the game.
All 10 players are vulnerable. Not like map
nobody's
objectives.
got God mode on.
Yeah, this is me buying time, by the way.
Cool.
I'm not even actively thinking about it because I'm trying to think of ways to stall you longer.
Awesome. I'm going with Awesome Jake. Nice.
So, we're both bolts. And we both went for... Well, Jake, I think Jake was like my number 2, probably. Okay. I think in order, it's Laz, Jake, Cuvo.
Wow.
Neil.
Oh, wow. You gave me... a lot there.
But that was like in order of like who I think most likely to die next.
Yes.
Not necessarily the order of deaths.
Yeah, my thought process was that Jake hates slow-paced games. He's gone on record saying so I think he's going to try and make something happen in the next couple of minutes, and he's not super tanky. Like, I don't think he's going to be able to just go for the wild style play that he wants to, and that's why I'm at where I'm at. But Jake does just pick up a belt to the Berserker, so... maybe. I could have been wrong. Like he'll just deal the damage.
And
that
we'll
he
both
needs.
be wrong with that kind of damage. You got Lasbra and Poseidon, you got Vin there backing you up, and Bara. Yeah, maybe the kill's going to end up happening over in dual lane. Bara is going to turn that around. Good stun onto Cuvo, and then a great ult from Jake gets them out of there. No deaths here. Lasbra got low. That's going to be the pull back from the Warriors immediately, though, onto the Primal Fury. Thinking twice about this one. Jake Haddix decided to show face around here, looking for the vision onto the objective. Still pulled by the Oni Warriors. But the Primal Fury doesn't seem to be their go button anymore. In fact, the bolts are going to pick it up as it gets dropped. They are just tossing it around like it's a partner in square dancing. Jake going to get tossed down, tossed around, and the stun is there. Mifflin, you get your points. Jake does die next.
Yeah, Jake just got overly aggressive there. I mean,
it was exactly as you called it.
Yeah, he wanted to shut him down. He really did, but he didn't have anybody with him, and now the Oni Warriors re-pull.
And now Bara goes down. Neil's low. Haddix gets the kill, and he gets to stand in that, but it's a 1v4. Luckily, he's got Bat out of hell, and a little help from Vin is going to get some damage spread out there. Lasbra still present. No Kraken. Falling back, but chased around by Aklina. It seems like that's going to be enough. They get all of the bolts away. This Primal Fury finally seems like it's going to be secured here for the Oni Warriors. Kraken off the mark there. Good beads from Nika. Doesn't quite get the kill, though. Still, pulls a big ult from Lasbra.
Yeah, Beads and Aegis both down now for Nika, so a potential in the future for Lasbra to try his hand yet again. And I'm going to go ahead and say it, man. The Poseidon jungle has not inspired so far.
It's done the opposite.
We've seen 2 Kraken attempts, I believe, throughout the entirety of the game. First one was a whiff. Second one was immuned out by Relics by Nika there. Oh, no, we've seen 3. He also hit a Gold Fury. And he confirmed that Gold Fury for his team. But
and, man, that Gold Fury didn't know what hit it.
Had no clue. But
everybody else, they were widely aware.
Yeah, and like it's not really as if Lasbra's been like utilizing the additional movement speed that Poseidon has to like make his presence known elsewhere on the map. Generally, the strength of Poseidon jungle is the fact that you aren't sacrificing farm to gank because you just maneuver the map so quickly, but it's been a really slow pace for him. He's just playing a standard mage at this point. That makes sense when you get a late game mage like Hubwa, who has hard to react to damage that is incredibly high output and like very easy to land. Water Spout, a great poke tool. Crushing Wave, a great self-peel tool, makes it very difficult to dive. Poseidon, on the other hand, well, Whirlpool is pretty easy to avoid. Kraken, you got Relics for that.
Knock up from Jake onto Dardes, and then immediately Jake eats a majority of his health bar in retaliation. 6 kills, Mifflin, 21.5 minutes in, and about a 3K gold lead here for the Warriors. And they're pushing their limits. They get a ult from Haddix. And they continue to push forward. Miff also won the poll.
Dude,
that was apparently running.
Yeah,
there,
I stay winning. You want to call out the numbers?
No, I'm going to keep it to myself, and you can call it out. No, it's 69-31 in favor of Mifflin. And you were just right, so realistically, they win.
Yeah, community's just smart for siding with me there. The Olympus Bolt smart to disengage this fight. We'll see if Neilma will allow them to do so.
He gets stunned out. Haddix is low. Nika needs one more hit. There's a final Kraken to finally hit somebody, but Nika, he doesn't go down. There's the Whirlpool and the tick damage from Vin. They're trying to turn this around, but like you said, it's just mage damage. Tower shot does its magic, gets a double kill over to Vinenu, and now with Bara coming in, it's going to be a 3 for 2. The chase is going to be on Vin. If he can get a good stun, could find a lot, but it's just a little bit short. You've got Chernobog running off into the jungle, and it seems like the bolts have to call it there.
Watch out for Dardes. He's hovering nearby, has a whole lot of damage output. Spear Desolation, Divine Ruin, and Doomorb will do that for you, but it's the Olympus Bolts who come out ahead in that engagement. 3 for 2 trade. Favorite the Chaos team, and a Pyromancer to boot, and the Oni Warriors, 5 minutes later than what we saw in Game 1, lose out on a massive team fight. Fire Giant pulled. They're spotted. Vote knows.
Yeah, Vote can see this. Vote has a global ult. Neil, though, is going to be respawning.
Jake?
Good stun. Going to miss just slightly there from Jake. Knockup not going to be good enough. The shot's almost there for Vote. But now they're going to be able to find it. Bara found the 1v1 earlier, and he's got help this time around. Vote goes down, and that's a stagger. 1 minute without Vote. They're not going to start the Fire Giant back up, but they do get another glorious kill to give them a good position around this FG.
Yeah, I think they just go straight back to the Fire Giant. That's 45 seconds on Vote. Silver lining for Vote is that he's got the global presence. Silver lining for the Olympus Bolts is that even if Lasbra hasn't been slamming gods, my man will decimate in PvE. The Trident does so much damage. They've got great secure, but the Olympus Bolts playing on the left side of the map now. Significant grouping there. I am curious about this. I mean, invade attempt, maybe a tier 1 tower. Maybe they didn't realize the Gold Fury was down. There's still 20 seconds left on vote. The Bolts got to do something with this time.
Well, right now the answer is
rope-a-dope.
wasted. Maybe they're going to be able to get something
Great
good
knock-up.
knock-up, good stun, good combo, and Dardez is just gone from the map. If you can't get something done in the minute that vote is dead, then make another minute. They kill off Dardez, and now it's a tier 2 push on left.
Yeah, easy enough. The Olympus Bolts split the map. Maybe the Oni Warriors were of like mind with me, just assuming that the Olympus Bolts would have grouped up on the Fire Giant, caught unaware in their own tier 1 mid tower. And that's a trade out onto Dardez. Tier 2 and tier 1 on left will fall down. And the Bolts are going to go for it. They are teleporting all the way across the map. Can they make it to the fire? Nearly.
Yeah, they get, well, close enough, right? And then you dash forward just like that. I think a blink even from Haddix.
Oh,
Maybe
Nika.
unnecessarily.
Does he know? He knows.
Should be able to see this, but what are you going to do? No, there's
got
no
ults.
Kraken. This is going to be the damage. Bolts do secure the Fire Giant. Cuvo's gone in. Nika is around. The Bolts kind of coin toss that one. 179 damage from a Medusa basic attack. Gets all 5 members. The Fire Giant 25 minutes in. And finally a gold lead in their favor as well. All off of the back of that tier 2. Mifflin, they've got plenty of work to do on the map, but they got something going in their favor.
Gotta think that this is just a crushing game state for the Oni Warriors. Again, they establish a lead throughout the early. They group up, try and siege a tower before going towards the neutral objectives, get crushed on 1 push, and the Olympus Bolts start running with the game from there. Now Fire Giant on 5 members and 4 towers still standing to collect gold from on the map. The Oni Warriors' base defense is a little bit weak thanks to Dardez playing the Morrigan. It's very difficult for her to get involved in these true simplified 5-on-5 engagements. Maybe if the Oni Warriors so choose, they can group up, try and catch the Olympus Bolts unaware in the jungle. That's where Dardez is going to find a lot of his value. Other than that, the rest of the composition for the Oni Warriors pretty good in a base siege defense. Cuvo Fred can separate the fight with the Winds of Shamash, Neoma, if anyone steps too far forward. We've seen what he's capable of on this pick. Nika as well, going to be pretty adept at keeping these waves out of his tower if he has to by piercing the veil. Probably going to trust Dardez with the Dark Omen to do that himself, and then Hunters will do Hunters things regardless. I mean, Vote's just going to be throwing out auto attacks.
Yeah, he's going to be hitting pretty hard. Wind Demon online. A little bit behind Barra, tier 2 for Barra on another crit item.
Yeah, but
Probably
it's like
what,
a
like
worthless
death
tier
premium?
2.
Is it?
Yeah, Short Sword is awful. It's got, Doug, give me a
Yeah,
hover.
it
I think
kinda
it's like,
isn't
it's like
it?
15 power, and like that's it.
We'll see whether or not it makes a difference for him here. We'll have to watch. As Jake goes back, heals up Vin. Vin took a ton of damage throughout all of that. Dardez did as well, though. Vin does get taken down by Cuvo. Haddix, Jake trying to find the jungler over there, but they've lost their mid laner and have nothing to show for it right now outside of the Fire Giant buff still on their belts. There's one to scoop up, and now Haddix looking for a little bit more pressure. Beads out the stun. There's going to be a double
Great
knock
knock-up.
up from Neil, making sure to control things, force the bolts to fall back. Constellation tier 2 potentially on the line here as they get aggressive once more.
They still have the Kraken, and you've still got Petrify for the Olympus Bowl, so the team fight still largely in their favor. The Oni Warriors have expended every single one of their ultimates, but look at the relic game of the Oni Warriors. Beads lost for Nika. He's still got Aegis, so you're not worried about Kraken. You still got Beads and Aegis for Dardez, so he's not worried about Kraken. Aegis up for Vote as well. None of the carries have had to use any of their defenses here.
Well, there's going to be the tier 2 push that they wanted. 1 minute left on the power play. Maybe not as much going in favor of the Bolts as they would have liked, but they do manage to push themselves up. It was 2K at the start of this, and now 4K gold lead, so they manifest a little bit more. Oni Fury's got a few more minutes before it spawns back, and their power play is going to disappear before all of that. Pyromancer back on the board. And honestly, Mifflin feels like the only thing the Bolts can do safely. Phoenixes don't feel close in their future. And all they did was get that 1 kill onto Cuvo in terms of team fight. So realistically, I don't know, even with the FG, I'm not sure how, outside of Kraken, if that disappears before a team fight, I don't know how convinced I am in the Bolts being able to just take the rest of the game. I think the Warriors are just as in this, save for the secure that the Bolts have.
Yeah, I think Dardez is going to be the shining ray of hope for the Oni Warriors. Now that you're, again, fighting in neutral territory around a neutral objective, that's where the Morgan really does start to flourish. Polynomicon finished, tier 2 Ob Shard, so a good deal of power and penetration now for the Morrigan of the Oni Warriors. If she's able to lock eyes with Lasbra, Ven, Barracuda, even Haddix to a certain extent, can at least TKO Haddix, will just straight up KO the other 3 targets. Jake, the only one who's probably not too concerned with Dardes on the map. And then from there, you've got what is one of the, if not the best transformation target for Morrigan, Camazotz. It's, let me go in stealth, find my stun combo, Dark Omen, Poly Proc. If they live, I'll turn into Camazotz, bat out of hell, and either get out or finish off my kill, then get out. So keep your eyes on the Oni Warriors mid laner.
Keep your eyes on Nika dancing in the walls. He's going to be just fine getting out of there. Fire Giant back in 30 seconds here. The Bolts already looking to take supremacy in terms of ward vision, as they just did all around the left-hand entrances to the right side jungle. Now it's just going to be, can they find the big? I mean, look at Jake. Jake is waiting for someone to walk forward so he can stun them. That is about all that this does to me. And I think Haddix is looking for him as well. There's going to be the blink, the knockup not going to connect, and it's not going to get Neil. So they're not going to find the easy kill they were hoping for.
No, he does find the Collat, though. Knocks Dardes out of the stealth, so you at least have vision on where the Morrigan is. This is a good call from Vote. Decided to split the map. Has global presence, so it can rejoin the team at any point. Significant power spikes hit, though. Barracuda finishes up that short sword straight into a Deathbringer, and even further, envenomed now. So whoever is taking crits from Barracuda is just doing less.
And that's going to potentially show its face right here. Immediately they get Nika to fall back. Kraken wide, does not connect. Cuvo goes deep into the back line. It's going to be up to the damage from Barra, from Vin. Can they peel? The answer is no. Vote comes into this fight and goes big. Immediately Neil picks up a second, and it's 2 for none. And they're going to continue that tear if they're the Oni Warriors. The chase is on. Lasbra has nothing to do here. Vote gets himself a double and might just look for a little bit more. Cuvo finalizes the kill onto Lasbra, and they might just go for the deicide. Haddix one leap away from potentially dying. There's going to be the bat out of hell to deny that from happening, but a Fire Giant for the Warriors and a lot of map to work with.
Surprised the Warriors don't even attempt to start pushing their way forward there. I thought maybe it would have been at least a Phoenix and then back up to the Fire. Instead, going to go ahead and take the enhanced Fire Giant for themselves. And look, there's the duality of Lasbra's Poseidon. It's something we were talking about earlier with Habois. Similarly, on the Water God. Miss the Kraken, miss your potential. Poseidon sitting at the bottom of the damage chart, 7,400. The Olympus Bolts, they're going to need more from him.
Yeah,
No, they got it. They got it. Don't worry about that.
I was a little worried about it.
Don't
they
worry
were ready to leave.
Yeah.
And then Cuvo decided to help out. They get the tier 2 in mid as well. So Mifflin, let's talk about gold leads and how it's transient at this point. It keeps going back and forth between the two of them. Look at that giant divot. It's like a little, like a ladle, I guess, in terms of the shape of.
Like a spoon?
Yeah, well, I don't know. That was too deep to be a spoon, right?
Well, it could be a big spoon.
That's what a ladle's just a big spoon.
No, ladle's like it's like a. Yeah, you're right. No, ladle, but like, no.
Well, because ladles go down like
this. Yeah, they go down and then they. Look, we don't need to discuss the.
It's like that one spoon from Quest Complete that nobody chose that would have been perfect for the eggs. Go watch that, youtube.com/SMITEPro. I'm guessing is where that is. And then argue for me as to why I should have been right and was denied points in Quest number 3.
You were holding on to that.
Yeah, I'm still a little mad about it. The Bolts, though, Mifflin, suffering. Not necessarily from success, just suffering right now. Kraken, it is ride or die. You connect with it, the fight seems to go well. You miss with it, immediately things fall apart. And that one we just saw was a wide miss. And so a lot that's riding on Lasbra's shoulders to really make this happen.
We haven't seen a Kraken hit legitimately, I don't think. There was one Kraken onto Nika when the Oni Warriors were diving the tier 2 tower.
And that's the one.
I think that's the only one that has hit center mass, essentially. And
on a player.
On a player. And it's reflected in the damage charts.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Neilmaw's beating him, you know? Like, Lasbra really needs to come up big in a couple of these team fights to justify this pick in the jungle. And Poseidon is good in a base defense. He's very good at keeping the waves out. He can lock down the entirety of the Phoenix pit, essentially, with the Kraken. It makes it very hard for the Oni Warriors to know when they can get committal around the objective. That said, the Oni Warriors can play it slow. They've got enhanced Fire Giants. They could just shoot a couple of shots at the Phoenix, back up, rinse, repeat, and keep the Olympus Bolts on the back foot. I'm not sure what the base defense is going to look like. Generally, when you have like a Camazotz on your team, you want to go for the spearhead style defense. The best defense is a good offense. But I don't know. It's very difficult for Ven and Lasbra to connect with these priority targets when Neilma's standing right here in front of everyone.
Yeah, and he's not been letting anybody get away with any good knockups, good stuns from Neil so far this game. This Phoenix has not been touched too much, though. There's going to be the knockup onto Jake. He goes in for the fight. It doesn't seem to be enough, and that's the go button for the Warriors. They're walking forward towards the bolts. They're going to opt instead to burn down the Phoenix. Pull back, Dardes. Invis may be looking for a little bit more. But now it's just going to be strip the jungle. They only have a minute left on the power play, and a tier 2 still exists on right. And they're going to rectify that incredibly fast. Potentially try to take the third Phoenix of the Bolt's base.
Yeah, Enhanced Fire Giant and a Polynomicon means the Oni Warriors, if they make contact with the Phoenix, will remove the Phoenix from the game, or even potentially Haddix.
Oh,
That's a lot of damage.
And now it's the turnaround potential. Dardes knocked up, but they don't have any follow-up. Dardes essentially gets away with murder, takes half of Haddix's health and then nothing in response. And now it's the pressure on the right side. Bird, there's going to be some damage. Good crack, and that one finally connects and gets a kill onto Cuvo. But is it too late? You've got so much going on to defend your base. Fire minions into the Titan room. They get Vote on top of that. They're surging forward as the Bolts with 2 members defending. Neil Ma, half health. And it seems like he's going to be fine, trying to rectify some of the pressure that has been applied by the Warriors. The Bolts are going to push up on right, push up, I think, on left, and maybe even in mid, just to try and save themselves the mental task of defending the base.
Nika creating some space. Dardes just need to make contact with his Phoenix respawning very shortly here, but the Olympus Bolts have regrouped for the defense and will stop them. Has Nika stepped too far forward, though?
Damage is good, but not enough to lock him down. You need some CC here if you want to chase the clean of the damage, and Retaliation's going to be solid. Jake looking for the setup. It's not going to be there. Slow's good. There's the whirlpool, and there is Dardes as Horus getting him out of there. That was a good retreat from the Warriors. That might be a long cooldown for Dardes. It's not going to be back in 18 seconds, but that was incredible for them.
I don't think there's anything else that gets Nika out of there. That is, I would have not. In 100 years, you know, like in chess, how they do like checkmate puzzles?
Yeah.
If you put me in that scenario, it's like, how does Nika live here? Look at the composition, look at the positioning. I would have not once been able to figure that one out. Dart is able to do it in the heat of a moment of an SPL match. Massive for the Oni Warriors. Had the Olympus Bolts been able to pick up the kill onto Nika, could have opened up the door for a much easier Fire Giant return for the Chaos team. But now it's the Olympus Bolts in yet another uphill battle. Center and right Phoenix removed from the map. Left side has come back, and no more fireman waves, so you don't have to worry about that. But it's going to be a 5-on-5 in a bad map state.
Yeah, not comfortable in the least for the Bolts. They did get rid of the fire minions on left. And, you know, positives where positives exist, I guess, for him. Lasbra has Kraken. And the last one, the most recent one, recency bias, did hit a player. And so we're at least going to give him credit for that. Pyromancer goes the way of the Warriors, so anybody who backs will be able to get back to the action pretty quickly. Haddix chased down by Nika, but they're not going to continue that too long. Jake is going to be, it's Jake and Neil, right? Jake has been aggressing, but taking a lot of damage in response. Neil has been aggressing and setting up his team for Nuts plays. So realistically, I think this Bacchus is someone to worry about. They're standing in the FG pit. Bolts give up the entirety of this side of the map, dealing with the fire minions. It seems like that should be enough, but no one's in the pit with Neil. In fact, he's going back to base.
Yeah, slow play here for the Oni Warriors. Every second not creating pressure on the map is a second that the Olympus Bolts can spend clearing out these waves, creating space for their own Phoenixes. Mid-Phoenix going to respawn very shortly, maybe 2 more waves, 3 more Fire Minion waves total before that one comes back. And the Olympus Bolts should be able to clear those out relatively easily, as long as they keep Haddix there, because he doesn't have to concern himself about the one-shot potential that Dardes has got through that stealth. So just leave him to his own devices. The rest of the Bolts can slowly start to clear out that right side, and right wave is the easiest to defend alongside the Fire Giant. The Oni Warriors taking a very slow pace to this one, do eventually pull out the Enhanced Fire.
Mid-Phoenix respawns, like you said, 1 more Fire Minion wave is what they're going to have to deal with here. Haddix, he's got plenty of room to wiggle with. Jake does not, though. Barely able to dash away from that one. Maintains his life. And that's going to be necessary for him, but it's a 4v5 right now as Jake has to go back to the base. He could get some good damage. Started up one more time. Haddox stepping forward. Haddox just absolutely melted by the Warriors. A frontliner gone, and Dart is once again back into the Horus. Transitions and is trying to figure out where to go. They get aggressive onto Venenu, and they're going to run down the right-hand lane. 2 minutes on the death timers right now. 1 for Haddox, 1 for Vin. And it seems like that's going to be a wide opening for him. But look at Lasbro, look at Jake. Kraken available in midfield. It could go huge or it could go nothing at all. Neil jumps into the back. Jake stunned out. They're going to fall back. Mid Phoenix gone. Right Phoenix gone. And the Warriors stepping forward to the Titan room. Kraken immuned out there by the mid laner. And now the Titan goes down and the Warriors push us to 3.
That is another 40-minute banger for the Oni Warriors and the Olympus Bolts, taking us to a 3rd game in the set. Look, I don't want to put all the blame on one guy. I don't want to, but it's my job.
But yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Also.
We got to get Lazra back on an assassin or a Habwa or a mage. Yeah, I mean, you called it out. Maybe mages are a downside in the jungle.
I don't know. The Habwa was pretty okay.
It was good.
I think it's that merit of which one are you playing and what can they provide. I think Poseidon maybe goes pretty big there if more than 2 Krakens of like what 8 that we saw throughout the game.
That
connect.
is a low amount of Krakens total to have shot. You know?
Especially breastplate was so early in the
Second
build,
item.
right? So a lot of cooldown, low amount of Krakens, not really connecting too often. Doesn't feel like it did as much as we wanted to see. Maybe they'll change that up. Maybe they'll go back to it. We'll find out in game number 3 right after this.
This should be fun. I'm really looking forward to this.
Let's see if this fits me. Perfect.
Not exactly my style, but you can't be too picky when fighting gods.
This will do nicely.
I feel different. I feel powerful.
I came, I saw, I wrecked.
Though we look similar, our attitudes could not be more different.
I look like $1,000,000. You call those wings? Ha! I like.
Hey, what are you staring at? Oh, really? Well, darn.
like it took so long for us to get 3-game sets last year in the SPL, and here in day number 1, we get to go to a Game 3 yet again. This time, it's with the Oni Warriors and the Olympus Bolts. A big win here, and another long-winded game out of the Oni Warriors and the Bolts. It's the Warriors, though, who come out on top at the end of it here. It's J-Mac and Trelly joining me to talk about this game here. And a lot of it, I do want to say, does come down. I don't want to harp on it too much. We already kind of have. But when you are playing a god like Poseidon, you are getting these Krakens that are so pivotal for a lot of these team fights. You've got to be hitting them out there. Obviously, the rest of the team not able to fully rally around here, but it's something that we brought up at the very top of the day, the volatility of these two junglers for this team. And at the end here of this one, it was the Oni Warriors jungler, Cuvo, who comes out on top.
Yeah, I mean, we harped on at the beginning of the set, right? Whichever one of these junglers is going to come out swinging, it's really going to make it easier for their team to have success. And obviously, Game 1, Lasper looked very solid on this. Hebo pick was hitting some massive crushing waves. Game 2 on the Poseidon just wasn't on the mark most of the time. That's all right. Cuvo obviously was able to do so much on this pick. Once he got late game, the finding Ven in that fight specifically pretty much just snowballed in their favor. And obviously, when you're able to get to that great of a start in this late game team fight, then you're going to have a good time.
And not just that, a lot of quick decision making by Dardes too. I mean, on that retreat in the left side lane, it's something that Mifflin brought up where you're wondering, okay, what's my checklist of ways that Nika gets out of this fight? Oh, maybe I juke them out in the jungle. Maybe I jump into a wall where they don't notice. Maybe I just run really fast and hope they don't catch up to me. But no, in fact, it might even be this play right here where Dardes transforms into the Horus ahead of time preemptively and says, all right, Nika, hop in the backpack. We're getting out of here. I mean, just heads up play by the Oni Warriors throughout the entirety of this game.
Yeah, Dardes looked real clean on this pick specifically. I mean, this is how you can really tell how great a Morgan player is. You don't just default to the, oh, I've got a Kamenzos transformation. This time, utilizing the Horus to the sky, making sure the movement of the whole squad was prioritized there. I mean, obviously, it's very easy to just say, hey, I'm going to stun, hit my poly shot, Dark Omen, turn into Kamenzos and bat out of hell. But when you really see these different styles of transformations, that's when the Morgan pick is really difficult to deal with. You never know what to expect.
Good Lord, the damage out of Nika. This is something you and I were talking about in the green room. Even with the low amount of damage built into the kits and built into the items for this god, Kalina just continues to top these damage charts by a wide margin. I mean, like 23, no, not 23, 13. Let me recorrect my math there that I tried to quickly do, which is something I should never do here. But I mean, absurd amounts of damage on this god again for a role where you're not traditionally building a ton of damage.
Yeah, I mean, right now Kalina is able to just do tons of damage in these team fights, specifically hiding in the walls. You're pretty much untargetable. I mean, you are untargetable, obviously, and then you get 2 ticks of your Tear the Veil, which is always going to do like a solid 30% to any sort of squishy that you hit with the upgraded Bluestone, that sort of thing. So yeah, Kalina is just very oppressive right now. And I would say if you don't know how to deal with all that sorts of damage, banning her away is definitely an option. It looks like the Oni Warriors are saying, hey, we're not first pick. We can't confirm that Kalina pick, so we're just going to take it away. That's their first ban.
Yeah, that's something I was actually going to, kind of bring up in a question to you if it didn't immediately happen was, it seems that Kalina has been kind of the win condition for both of these teams so far here as far as the solo lane was concerned. So if you're not going to get first pick, do you ban that away? The answer to that one is yes. The Oni Warriors have banned that one out. And the Bolts continue this same trend of Kabrak and Dodgy. There is something about either what the Oni Warriors are doing with their drafts whenever it's going on behind the scenes, or just something that the Bolts have been working out and workshopping themselves. They do not want those two gods to get into enemy hands. So those get banned away alongside the Morgan. So taking a shot directly at Dardes here in this third game.
Yeah, Dardes was just pretty annoying to deal with there. Obviously, again, just transforming into Horus specifically. It's like the amounts of movement you have, and you're just like, wait, I wasn't expecting that. Maybe a bat out of hell, maybe that sort of thing. So Dardes just too versatile on the pick right now. Oni Warriors opting to ban the Arya. So the Nox that they banned away last set is open. That Jake looked so solid on Game 1, and it was taken away from him in Game 2. So if the Bolts do prioritize this Nox support pick once again, that could certainly look to be an avenue for them to lock in here. Still, going to have to really think this one over, because again, the Game 1, it was not a stomp in any way. It was a very long-winded game that could have went. It was going back and forth, but the Nox definitely a pivotal part of how they played in Game 1.
But that does leave open both Erlong Shen and Gilgamesh. Those two gods were banned away in game number 1. Gilgamesh was left open in game number 2, and the Warriors decided to take that. And now we have both of them out here. So the real question now comes down for the Bolts and the Warriors, especially for the Bolts right now, is which of those two gods do you put more stock into? Which one do you have a heavier favoritism towards? And Trelly, if you're them, maybe you don't even answer that question. I was going to ask you, which of those two do you take? But for now, it seems that the Camazotz is going to be the call for the Bolts.
Right. Kalina is taken away, obviously, so Nika's not able to pick that. You have the Camazotz, just get that locked in right away. I don't think they have any fear of the Oni Warriors picking up the Nox, so they don't really have to first pick it. As long as they get it before the second wave of bans, that's always going to be an option if they really want to take it. So just getting this super safe possible. Again, a flex pick. It could be in the jungle, but right now we're pretty much leaning towards that solo lane Camazotz that we've seen so much. So getting Haddix on a pick where he feels comfortable and also very safe, able to, box effectively, but also not take too much pressure in that lane.
Well, it will be Gilgamesh on the side of the Oni Warriors along with Bologna. So we do have our solo jungle locked in on the side of the Warriors. That still leaves the Erlong Shen open, who's been banned out the entire time this set, and I think for almost the entirety of today, if I'm not mistaken as well. So the Bolts can pick that god up right now if they wish to do so. Otherwise, the Oni Warriors have the option to ban that one when Phase 2 comes around. But interesting to note, the Khepri has still been left open. That's something that the Bolts specifically have been taking away throughout the entirety of this set. I'm curious if the Warriors will draft that in their third slot.
Yeah, definitely an option here, depending on really what they want to get. Obviously, Morgan, again, is taken away, so that Camazotz is pretty free here. Not wanting to give Dart as that level of safety anymore is going to be a smart option here. The Bolts still pondering over the second pick. I really do think that getting Lasbra on this Erlong, something like that, something where you can get really aggressive early, as opposed to the Poseidon, which you have to sort of play back, play your farm game, run to your camps, that sort of thing until level 5 when you can get those effective Krakens. Erlong, you only really need a blink in, a pin, and then you can start auto attacking. That's the sort of benefit of the Erlong. You can really get active early game, and it does look like that Nox is going to be the first option here, as we really were liking to see that. But this time, not opting to go for the jungle. They're going to get the Morgan Le Fay.
Yeah, Nox and Morgan Le Fay. Double mage pickup on the side of the Bolts. One to support and one over to the mid laner. Oni Warriors will now have to answer which call they want to go with as far as their picks are concerned. Like I said earlier, the Khepri is still open. That's something that the Bolts have not wanted to give over to Neil Ma. It's one of his higher performing gods over in that support role. And you see the Warriors are really talking over, seeing what their pick options are. They can grab their mid. They still need their hunter. Obviously still needing their support as well here. So a lot of options up here for the Oni Warriors before we go into the second round of bans. The answer is not going to be the Khepri. It's actually going to be the Fafnir that's been banned away second phase more often.
Yep, now they're going to have a large amount of objection shred, some solid early pressure as well. Yeah, you thinking about it right now?
Yeah, it just dawned on me how gross this initial top 3 is.
Yeah, this back line, or I guess front line, but trying to get through this to the back line is going to be very difficult, obviously. You essentially just have a very tanky 3 targets already for the Oni Warriors. A strong dive as well as just, you're going to need constant ward pressure because, again, anytime Fafnir is on the map, that Coerce is going to be a tool of just used to shred these objectives, obviously. Now, the Bolts are going to have to deal with their Hebo being banned away. Even if they weren't looking at it, Lasbra no longer has that avenue in the jungle here. But considering the last time they picked Nox, they went double Hunter, and that's the reason the Hebo was flying through. I would not be against seeing Lasbra finally piloting maybe like an Awilix in this situation. He loved the Awilix pick. You have 2 leaps already and the knockup out of the Dragonflight from Morgan Le Fay, so that could be a pretty solid pickup here.
Could be, but so far, bans are going to be Erlong, Shen, and Hubble on the side of the Oni Warriors. Surprised that Erlong even made it this far down the draft, but since it didn't get picked up third on the side of the Bolts, instead that was the Nox Morgan Le Fay, the Oni Warriors had the option to ban that one out. And then Iset and Agni on the opposite side, and that's just a shot saying, hey, we don't want Dardes to have a good mage because with the Fafnir already locked in, we know for sure this Iset, if it did get picked up, wouldn't have been able to go to support.
Yep, Thoth is still available. Definitely a highly contested pick in the mid lane still right now with the double flat pen, obviously. So since that's not going to be banned away, that definitely could be an avenue to look at here, trying to match some of that range from the Morgan Le Fay. It is going to be AMC locked in. We've already seen AMC once this set in the mid lane, so this could be a flex, obviously locked in for the other team specifically. So this AMC is going to be, just held on to here as we get to go back to the Bolts and see what they want to pick up.
Got a nice little shot of the birthday boy there. He did put it up on his Twitter that it's his birthday. Is it real? Is it not? Well, that's for us to probably never actually find out in reality here. But no, going back to this AMC, this is an objective shredding composition. It was something that I believe Mifflin talked about earlier on in today, where you throw Bologna Fafnir as a combo at any objective, that Eagles Rally plus Coerce combo. Shogun's Kasari is guaranteed going to be picked up by one of those top 3 out of the Oni Warriors. And you have an AMC. I can only imagine what this final pick is going to be out of the Warriors. They're really potentially giving Dardes, still could be vote, depending on where this AMC goes, what that pick is going to be. And the Olympus Bolts are now looking at Cthulhu as a final option. How do you feel if Cthulhu does get locked in here? How do you feel that kind of fits in for the Bolts?
Well, it looks like if the Cthulhu does get locked in, which it does, it looks like Lasbra will be piloting this Camazotz as the jungle. So finally seeing Lasbra on a traditional assassin here. Going to be able to see a large amount of dive, a lot of safety on that pick as well, as Barracuda locks in the Scotty. Who, I mean, again, he was just talking about this pick the other day when they were in studio. He's saying you're really picking it for that 1v1 lane matchup. You're trying to just run down the enemy ADC. You're not going to be like this big shred force in team fights. You want to be getting ahead in lane and then just trying to rush down those towers and things like that nature.
And now the question is, who is that 1v1 matchup going to be for Barracuda? Is it going to be this AMC, or is it going to be this last pick out of the Warriors? And it will be the AMC. Tiamat makes her way all the way to 10th pick here for the Oni Warriors. I'm honestly a little surprised she made it this far down the list with the fact that Thoth was still open. Agni has been a prevalent mage out here as well. Zeus obviously being banned out. Tiamat would have seemed like the likely go-to target after that, but Oni Warriors do hold that on to 10th pick.
Yeah, a lot of space control in the Agni and the East side, just making sure to ban those away. Tiamat still a very large, damaging, safe sort of mid laner in her own right, but just doesn't come online quite as early, I would say. Agni level 5 already getting the bumps, and that's going to be a pretty solid pick up there. And then, of course, East had the circle protection, so Tiamat just doesn't have that huge level 5 power spike, so just leaving that open. Probably the lesser of the three evils just for this specific draft, obviously, because you have the Bellona, the Gilgamesh, the Fafnir. You're going to be going in quite a lot. Not too much peel on this comp.
Yeah, and here for the Olympus Bolts, you got this Cthulhu, you've got this Camazotz now. So Camazotz going into the jungle into Lasbra's hands. Maybe a little bit of a different look now for this guy specifically, because we have been seeing a lot more of the Camazotz towards the solo lane. But Cthulhu going into this matchup, a lot of times we talk about Cthulhu with gods that have difficulty appealing for themselves, or gods that have these big, giant areas of no, don't ever fight here, similar to like Olorun with the Sanctified Field. But how do you like Cthulhu against the comp that the Oni Warriors have drafted? I mean, it feels like this is just a comp that can absolutely annihilate a Cthulhu.
Yeah, I mean, late game AMC is definitely going to be shredding a Cthulhu, but you think about a Cthulhu getting on top of an AMC very early into the game, that's going to be a completely different story. Descent into Madness pretty much means AMC is never going to be able to outrun. The Hives doesn't give that much movement speed quite yet, so you're just going to be able to get on top, knock them up. A lot of damage, especially if there's a Scotty around. The chase potential is going to be insane there. So if this is going to be a late game burn comp, obviously, the Cthulhu is going to have to build into a lot of protections, Nemean Lion, that sort of thing. But early game, I would say the Cthulhu is going to have a pretty easy time running down AMC.
And looking at these two compositions, I mean, Charlie, which of these two do you really kind of put that early game favoritism towards? Is it this heavy auto attack comp that the Oni Warriors have drafted, or do you kind of give it over towards more of this lockdown style burst that the Bolts have?
I mean, I would say right now you have that Nox Scotty duo lane, not early level 2, but once pretty much like level 5 starts, there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of CC specifically. Obviously, AMC has no sort of, CC immunity. He's going to have to beads pretty much every time Calder goes into Rudum, and or if Jake hits a pretty solid lockdown, a shadow lock, that's going to be forcing the purification beads. It's going to be very difficult to try to survive in this lane. Early game, AMC is going to have to stay in her tower and just sort of throw the honey out and try to survive as long as he can.
Morgan Le Fay, Camazotz will be kind of that mid 2v2, assuming that everything's falling in line to where we think it is here onto the Bolts. Meanwhile, Warriors will have Gilgamesh and Tiamat. So a little bit of a back and forth kind of tussle between those two out here when it comes to those two gods out there, though. The Oni Warriors and the Olympus Bolts, game number 3, ready to go.
One of these teams is going to find their success, Mifflin. They're going to find it here in game number 3. There's a lot, I think. Not even, I want to say, like, on the line between them as much as it is. Just trying to figure out who exactly, again, is going to be able to find the dominance. And you know what, Mifflin? You asked for something at the end of game number 2. And specifically, no mages in the jungle for Lasbra.
I said,
not Poseidon.
Yeah,
I think is what you said.
I think it was mainly just not Poseidon. And, he's answered the call. He heeded the call. That's a Cthulhu reference. And topical, because Cthulhu's in this game.
Or a reference to Heed, the solo laner.
Yeah, it wasn't a reference to him.
Okay. Yeah, right. It was a reference to Cthulhu, who's in this game, Mifflin.
Let's go.
And he's going to be playing against the Bellona. And I think worth mentioning, something you wouldn't have expected and believe we saw earlier. First blood on a Cthulhu at level 5, not something that happens often. And so maybe Haddix will be able to bring that same magic and also maybe not. I will say, wow, this
It's the
Cthulhu
exact
skin
matchup, too.
just looks cool, doesn't it?
You've been calling out the skins department recently. Are you like a high-res
It's
employee
almost
or
like
something?
almost like we should sell skins a little bit, right? I mean, look at this. First off, look at the topical Neo Ma. St. Patrick's Day was just around the corner.
Well,
like it just happened
like
a
it
couple
just
weeks
happened,
ago.
yeah.
Okay.
What did you want me to talk about?
I don't know.
I can't analytically break down St. Patrick's
You
Day.
can break.
What do you want from me?
As you
man?
start going through the historical trackings of St. Patrick's Day, no. I was expecting a conversation about skins. I don't know. You're the one who brought it. Well, you're the one who brought attention to me bringing attention to them.
Yeah.
Either way, it was the same matchup. Do you think Haddix has the same chances, especially given what we've seen the first few levels?
Well, quite literally, he has the exact same chance because it's the same matchup in the same lane, and the god stats don't change between games. So, can Haddix do it? Yeah, he's got the same opportunity. Is it likely to happen? Doubt it, because Nika is a very safe player who's got a good deal sustain thanks to Death Toll. Bludgeon also going to be make her a very good Death Toll abuser, just healing off the entirety of the wave. I would argue you probably just shouldn't get soloed by Cthulhu in general. Just doesn't happen very consistently. He doesn't have burst damage, and that is generally
I can
how it
genuinely
works.
say I don't think I've seen it until today. Like,
Yeah.
Cthulhu doesn't do a lot of soloing. Vote, not getting soloed, but maybe duo down here. No, not going to get killed off. Somehow it missed me through the draft wave. Maybe it was something that was going on between us, but I didn't even register the Nox once again for Jake.
No, Jake is loving this pick, and he's gone towards Lono's mask in the second slot every time I've seen him go towards it, the last couple times at least, and that has really allowed him to go for plays that make me go ooh, you know, because he just dashes in crazy and goes for the root, trades out beads, and generally has survived thanks to that percentage protections that he gets from Lono's mask. So excited for that one. I think it definitely fits his play style, but I would argue that Jake on the Olympus Bolts has not got as much CC around him this time. It really is just going to be up to him and Haddix together to act as the CC core for this team. Sure, Barracuda can throw out the ranged root, or maybe if Van's able to get some of that runic mastery going, but still going to be pretty difficult, I think, to consistently lock down targets, especially up against a very slippery composition from the Oni Warriors. You've got a very tanky front line between Neil, Nika, and Cuvo, all of which have got leaps available. CC immunity in the majority of these kits as well. Dardes, to a certain extent, going to be able to get involved and get in the face of whoever it is in the quadrupedal stance. You know, CC immunity there to Vote, the only one I'm thinking who's going to struggle to survive some of these dives.
I thought Jake was going to be alone here with his aggression. Barra coming up a little slow, but it doesn't matter. Wow. They got Lasmer going for first blood. It takes a couple of hits, but they're going to get their vote put down in the ground.
All right, I'm with it. Lasmer Kamazats, I am rectified game 2, man. That is out of my mind. That is a huge bit of presence already. And what did Trelly talk about with Scotty in the lane? That's where she needs to dominate. That's where you need to establish your lead. And maybe Lasmer working his way over and making that much easier for Barracuda to continue to do so, because Scotty from ahead is incredibly threatening. She's similar to Danzaburo in that you just win harder when you're playing this god. And up against Vote, who is playing an immobile AMC, who has gone the stacking path, does not have the Transcendence just yet. It's going to be a long time until he's able to freely farm that one up. The Olympus Bolts, that's a great place to strike first.
Especially getting themselves, like you mentioned, just anything for Lasmer at this point. I'm lapping up. I love to see it, mainly because that Poseidon has not erased itself from my mind.
Oh, it's gone.
And that is just maybe unfortunate. Maybe Lasmer would prefer it that way. We'll see if he can continue this amount of pace. Vin, as well, going on to the Morgan Le Fay, is going to be an interesting pick. We've seen this a couple of times today. And it's still, like, not necessarily surprising to me, but it feels like she's in that same area she was towards the end of last year, where it's like, well, she's a good mage, and she's good in mid, but you also don't want, like, she's not the top mage. She's kind of, at this point, maybe on par with how often we're going to see Tiamat, considering how low down she's gone. Maybe we can talk about that in a little bit. Cuvo gets a good drop kick onto Vin. Thought there was going to maybe be a little more out of it. Dardes gets some good poke onto Lasbra. But they go ahead and walk on out of there, and they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think Morgan Le Fay is very strong. And with the flat pen changes, I haven't seen enough competitive play since the nerf to Divine Ruin and to Spear of Desolation.
Look at that.
She may have jumped a couple of tiers. Works very well with a Doom Orb. Can still go towards that flat pen in the 3rd slot. I think Morgan Le Fay might be a little bit slept on right now.
Neil Ma, I was going to give him praise for the steals he got. There's the transformation, a little bit of immunity, and a wide leap to get him out. The damage is good, but not good enough from Venenu. So Neil gets away with it on top of being able to secure the scepter. And the praise I was going to give him at Mifflin is he knows the pattern so well on the offering spawns that he was able to just steal them away. And he spent plenty of time over there. What is it, 15% of your health, which admittedly is going to be less damage each time you get hit by it. But
is it current HP or max HP? I thought it was max HP.
Is it max HP?
I thought, but I could be wrong.
I've just been running under the assumption of current HP, but honestly, max would make sense as well.
Huh.
But that would hurt either way.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, he got out with his life, which is impressive.
It is. It wasn't really up to Neil, though. Like, sure, he dodges out the Shadow Lock from Awesome Jake, but had Jake just connected the ultimate off the Dragon transformation, Neil Ma would have bled out, thanks to Ven landing every single one of his ultimate shots over the wall. So, Neil Ma does survive, but maybe not of his own machinations.
So, yeah, maybe a little more luck, maybe a little missteps, I guess is what we'll call them there for the bolts, the nicer term. Now
what's the meaner term?
Just blatant mistakes.
Blunders.
Yeah, blunders, goofs, oopsie daisies. These aren't all meaner. I was gonna say oopsie daisies is okay. Like, oh, it's a little
patronizing.
Especially considering most of them are adults. Saying that, like,
like
oh, you
all
made
of
an
them. They're
oopsie
all
daisy.
adults.
Oh, are they? Yeah, they are. I guess they are. So that is something that they, and well, specifically.
It's something they could keep to themselves. Yeah. That's a big dub for the Olympus Bolts.
Man, where are we going with this? That got derailed really fast. 500 gold for the Warriors? Pretty much nothing 8 minutes into this one as far as it goes. And it's just been the First Blood, but it's First Blood opposite of where First Blood is, right? So First Blood went to the Bolts. And they haven't been able to maintain that lead or find any kills since then. As AMC has gone into Transcendence, so a slower build for Vote.
It is going to be a little while until he gets that one stacked up. What is that, 20 stack difference between Vote and Barracuda currently? So Barra going to get the better end of that 1v1, but it isn't a 1v1 in the lane. Beads lost for the Scotty as Vote was able to sink the Stinger into him with the help of Neil Ma, but won't be able to retrieve it, so that cooldown going to be a little bit longer for AMC this time around. Seems like both teams contented with a slightly slower pace, so I'll go ahead and talk about the scaling of both of these compositions.
Yeah.
I'd argue the Olympus Bolts have a very similar comp to Game 1 in that it is very pick-focused. This time, though, they do have a good bit of teamfight presence just by nature of having a Cthulhu on your team. Whereas on the other end, the Oni Warriors have got great scaling from Vote. AMC, one of the hardest scaling hunters in the game. Dardes on Tiamat going to deal a ton of damage as time goes on. And, well, Neilma is only going to make all that damage do even more with the Coerce. I think the Oni Warriors should probably look to play around neutral objectives a little bit more quickly. The onus on them to play around this double auto attack composition, Cubo, Fred, and Vote, utilizing the Fafnir to shred out these objectives. But then I'm looking at how both squads don't necessarily have the greatest confirmation tools, so Gold Fury's not exactly the easiest to look towards, and it's not as if the burn is so crazy from the Oni Warriors that you could just walk on up. We might be in for a much slower one here, Gore.
Well, 1 kill, 9.5 minutes in. I'm incredibly inclined to agree with you at this point. Okay, yeah. You go first.
I went first last time.
No, we said it at the same time.
Yeah,
though.
but I said it first.
Okay. If you said it first, I'll bite the bullet. I'll go first.
Are you gonna stall out until I guess again?
So I just want to double check. It's next to die.
Yes,
is what I am guessing.
Chat,
for.
feel free to participate. You know the rules.
And then I guess potentially a poll for which one of us you think will be right as well.
Well, no, I think they could just type whatever they think.
I think it'd be fun to have them vote. Well, no, because there's not 10 options in a Twitch poll.
No, there's 4.
There's 5.
There's 5. It's 1 vote.
I'm gonna give it over to Jake.
Okay, well, I guess I have to play devil's advocate now. I'll say Ven.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm certain.
I see Jake's dash there. Vin. Okay, yeah, no, that's a nice little shift in pace.
Yeah, Morgan Le Fay very exposed to the dive potential of the Oni Warriors. Kivo Fred with Winds of Shamash can be able to lock him down very easily. Neoma as well has great gap close. Both have ranged CC, so you're not too worried about Dragonflight as a self-peel tool. So, yeah, I think so. Ven, very much so, going to be uncomfortable in this lane until he gets that second relic, and he's not far off because we're 10.5 minutes into the game, and there has not been too much action. Just beads for now, but Shell from Awesome Jake might make it a little bit harder for any kills to come their way.
Myth, I'm going to make you feel real happy here. You were right. 15,
Yeah.
It's max health.
Yeah, okay.
That's just so you know. That's what I've been looking for here. And now Jake roots down, gets a lot out of Dardes in terms of health and the beats. But Mifflin, it all falls right there. Nothing else to follow it up. And Dardes is going to be able to get out of here. Level 12 is coming online for a majority of the carries. Last to hit are going to be the jungles. And, of course, the ADCs themselves over on the other side. These two hunters. And more than likely going to at least be the Aegis for Vote and Barra. We'll see what the junglers decide to do. The blink early on for Lasbro. We saw him get aggressive. And then nothing. He's been farming up pretty well since then.
Well, him and everybody else.
Yeah, and Dardes, not Dardes, Cuvo. Blink available with Dropkick, one of the most known initiators. But again, patience has been the name of the game. And you know what?
That's what Nika said.
That is what Nika said. And little did we know he was going to preach what he spoke as well. No, wait, that's play what he preached. There we go. Practice what he preached. We nailed it in 3, baby.
You've been using
we got
Wii
there.
a lot. You've been using this royal Wii, man.
Yeah.
It's you.
For better or worse, you're up here with me.
I sure am.
And therefore you're stuck. It's kind of like if I say we outside of this, typically it means like me and Katie. And like she might not have anything to do with it, but
If you say it
she
in
married
France,
me.
it means yes.
Good point. Bravo, Mifflin.
Dude, I'm falling
Good
apart out
French.
here. Start a fight. One of you guys fight so I can break it down.
What, the 40-minute last game wasn't enough action for you, considering what 30 minutes of it had very little. Pyromancer, here's some action. It's at least something on the map that's going to die outside of minions. It's going to be a Pyromancer traded out for the Fury. Barrow's watching the Fury. He's going to go ahead and move forward. Warriors get that one. I heard I got 10%. I heard you got 10%, but I missed the third one. As to what
it was a
poll
camp.
was.
Yeah, we got Cam 16. So our stagehand Lewis.
Oh.
They think he's going to die before anyone else in this game. He's like 24, by the way. Like, he's
it's
young.
going to take
that is
like
morbid.
years.
How macabre.
I'm glad that's how you interpreted that, Mifflin. Am I? I don't know if I'm glad about that. I'm.
The game's still a jig, by the way.
Intrigued.
Like we are
I know.
still here.
So I said what? I said Jake. You said Vin.
Yes.
Yeah. Nothing's happened. Last time, much quicker vindication. And most of the times playing this, how many people have actually been right? You got right last time.
We've had exactly one right.
And
on
that
the
was
casting
it.
team.
Wow,
Yep.
that's impressive.
Yeah.
So big claps for you. We'll see whether or not we get vindicated here. You have a 10% chance of getting it by guessing a single
1 in
player
10?
in this.
Yeah.
So why is that funny to you?
I just thought it was a great way to contextualize it.
Yeah,
for
10% sounds way cooler than 1 in 10 to me.
Yeah, you're right. But like percentages in this scenario, you got to take into account like actually like bookie odds. Like a carry is probably a little bit more likely to die than a tank, so you might give slight edge over to Ven in that scenario. But I guess Ven just has not been fighting. Can we see the damage charts, Doug? Let me just see.
They're low.
Are we poking? We're not poking either. Like not even the soul laners are poking.
3,500 damage is the top in this game. 14.5 minutes in is impressive from Cthulhu. From the sheer amount of not hits.
It's crazy that it's Cthulhu at all, right? Like Cthulhu
Yes.
like shouldn't be hitting Bologna more often, right?
Yeah,
like,
and Bologna should be Bologna at the
should be
top.
Bologna.
Just blanket statement. If she's in the game, she should have the top damage from sheer bullying context.
yeah, also with Frostbound Hammer, like you're not getting hit by the mire. I wonder where he's getting. Is Haddix just winning boxing matches? Or are they just like trading?
I mean,
autos?
when we glanced over there a second ago, Nika wasn't even hitting him, but Haddix was punching him. Didn't do much to Nika's mental. He just said, "Yeah, okay, cool. I'll see what you have to do. Maybe this is where things will change." Nope, Dardes leaps out of there. Beads on cooldown once again. Duo lane. Maybe some action finally stepping up for them. Jake looking for more. There's nothing to find in this side of the jungle. Maybe Cuvo, but with the pathing they're taking, it seems like Jake might be the one who's in a little bit more trouble. That one's me pushing my own narrative. And he's going to walk out of here, Mifflin. Well, is he? Neil Ma? Yes, he is. They're just going to let him walk out of there.
Well, I mean, he's got the scepter. He's already got Lono's masked. You want to use cooldowns on him. I want to see cooldowns get used in general.
Like just any of them.
Here, just toss
just like
them
some
out.
abilities.
Has Winds of Shamash been used this game?
I don't know. I think that might have been the first time I've seen Cuvo here. Vote is low.
No
Vote
way.
is getting shot. The Aegis is good. The bat out of hell is the chase down. And we were wrong this time. Vote is the next to die. 2 kills, 16 minutes in. They're starting to fight for the lowest kill count. It's only 4. They're halfway there for an SPL game.
There was a 4-kill game?
Yeah,
What season was that?
Last season.
Oh, man. Who was casting that?
Believe me and Dave.
Okay.
It was Dragons, Bolts.
Really? A
Yes.
Dragons game?
The Dragons had all 4 of them. They killed the Bolts.
Okay, well, that makes sense, I guess.
And they got it was a slow-paced game like this, right? 4 kills throughout the duration of it. I think 2 of them might have been like near-ish the end.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Dardez in a little bit of trouble.
Ooh,
Leads forward, but that's not going to be enough. A third for the Bolts. They've tripled it all in the last minute. And now they're going to push forward in the mid lane, get the tier 1 tower before falling back and going back to the status quo.
Well, fortunately for the Oni Warriors, this game is still solidly within their reach because the golden experience is minuscule. I think experience actually probably favoring the Oni Warriors right now. You got a level in the jungle. You're even in mid. Yeah, experience slightly favoring, or I can't tell. Yeah, there we go. 342 for the Olympus Bolts. I was wrong, and that's on me. That's
That's mainly because there's like a level and a half between Bara and Vote. That's the
Oh, that is
balancing
what
factor.
it is, yeah. Vote actually went for Runeforged Hammer. That's an interesting pickup. Passive of Runeforged, anyone affected by CC going to take 20% more damage. And Vote applies CC very easily. The Honey going to do it. I think that cripples count as well. So the ultimate Stinger going to mean they're taking percentage more damage because it does percentage defense shred. Applies a cripple. So it takes 20% flat more damage straight up. That's a pretty nasty combo. I'd never even considered that on AMC.
And like you said, he applies it pretty easily. Just like the fact that it says CC as opposed to like hard CC is really where the big win is.
Yeah,
for
because
Vote here.
it's not knockups, blinds, or
whatever the third thing is.
There's a
there.
third option
Grabs?
that it is also not. Is grabs an option?
It says grabs. Knockups, blinds, or grabs.
What is a grab? Is Atlas the only
Khepri
grab?
Pull,
Abduct,
I think, counts as a grab. Not sure how many others there are, though. Oni Fury pulled here by the Bolts. Now they're going to get aggressive. Haddix goes up into the descent into madness. And it's going to be Veneno who's low. The egg is not going to be good enough. Nika gets credit for the kill, but Cuvo's low. In retaliation, it's going to be a 1-4-1. Nika takes a little bit of damage from the Fury there itself. And now Neil pushed back towards Lasbra, but they've got a higher target in mind. Vote is who they want, and it is 6 kills to 1. Let's make it 7 for the Bolts. 1 more auto is all you need. It's going to be Calder. That does secure it for Bara there. Darda's last man standing for the Warriors.
And he pushes a wave into the mid tower, so at least able to pick up
They're
some
going
farm
fire.
for himself. They're right to do it. Might be
Oh, yeah, it's 19
deceptive.
minutes
we're
in.
19 minutes in, and they just 4-man wiped and trade for just Ven. Fire Giant, absolutely the right call here. And the Oni Warriors, or the Oni Warrior, Dardez, not going to be able to step up to this one. So first team fight of the game does go handily to the Olympus Bolts. And I think you got to give massive credit over towards Haddix, who separates the entire engagement with Ascent into Madness. It leaves Nika alone in the back line with Cuvo Fred, and they're not going to win that fight after they'd already removed Ven. Very easy for the rest of the Bolts to say, okay, well, they're here back stuck with us, and they're not going to move forward, because if they do, they're going to run into a giant monolithic CC god that is Haddix. Clean play from the Olympus Bolts. What can they do with this Fire Giant, though? First separation, first true separation of the game, I'd argue. 4,000 gold. Maybe you give a little bit of credence that way. But Tier 2 towers still standing. One Tier 1 on the right-hand side of the map, and the Oni Warriors' defense is not weak. Vote has got great space control. Dardes has phenomenal ability to keep these minions out of the way, or out of the towers. So we will see a Winds of Shamash. That is going to happen. We've seen one already.
It has to happen.
We're going to see that
Again.
from Cuvo Fred. I'm surprised the Olympus Bolts are going this slowly. I would have thought they would have been a little bit more willing to group up. Well,
you didn't have 19 minutes to back that up?
Well, I mean, but like the Fire Giant, they didn't have Fire Giant for those 19 minutes. Pick up the Oni Fury.
If they had it, would have been nuts.
Yeah, this will split the map, I suppose. So maybe we get a 4-1 split with Lasbra in mid. He's incredibly safe on Camazot, so you can leave him alone. Oni minions can act as a 6, so you get a 4-1 PvE split on the right that's going to favor the Oni minions, and that should clear out that Tier 1 tower at least on its own, too. So the Olympus Bolts, all they have to do is slow play these Tier 2s and wait for the minions to win them out on the right-hand side. The Oni Warriors, they've got to answer some hard questions. Who do we send to defend against Haddix and Lasbra?
Yeah.
It's a lot of CC, it's a lot of poke, it's a lot of sustain.
Oh my god, that tower just absolutely disappears. Easy to forget. I mean, you even called it out. It is 21 minutes into the game.
Yep.
So they do have the damage ready for them. 2 minutes left on the power play, and the Bolts are positioned outside the left side Phoenix. And Haddix immediately goes to separate this fight. There's Descent into Madness, and Nika is alone. Cuvo goes in, and they're looking for some blood, but they're not going to be able to find it here. The Bolts are looking for more, and they've got the damage to back it up. Cuvo goes down, and they're surging forward for a little bit more. The Phoenix is burned, and this might just be the end. No, they make it back to the Phoenix. The Warriors save themselves and buy time. Tier 2, Tier 1, and then Tier 2 up in right. You can see the pings coming through. The Bolts felt like they were steps away from victory there, but they have to pull back.
Vote still has ultimate. Neilma just now de-transforms, so silver lining for the Oni Warriors is that Vote can shred Haddix once that ultimate comes back up. Gonna be a little while. Tier 2 tower falls down as a matter of course, and I was incorrect about the Oni minion waves on the right-hand side. Couldn't handle the tower on its own. That's the last time I give any respect over to a minion in my life. The Olympus Bolts, though. Don't send a mortal for a god's job.
Oh, no.
They're going to clear it out on their own.
Oh, Lasbra was waiting for Vote, but gets caught out here. You had mentioned it before. You can leave him on his own, usually. It's Camazot's beats burned, no ults, half health. The good news is not a lot of people around. There's the blink to get a little more space in between, and that's going to allow a lot of openings. There were 3 people over here in the jungle with him. That's going to be a Tier 2 on right. 8-1 read the kills, and a 10,000 gold lead in favor of the Olympus Bolts. 40 seconds left.
What a chart.
On the power play, and that is wild how obnoxiously close that was for that long.
It was, 20 minutes just about until the Olympus Bolts completely blow open the doors of this game. Again, a Gold Fury fight is what nets them the Fire Giant and every single one of the Oni Warriors towers and even one of their Phoenixes. We'll see if the Oni Warriors can show up in neutral territory to defend around the Fire Giant. I think you have to, considering how poorly the base defense went last time around. I said it nearly in jest, but Haddix goes into Descent into Madness, tanks up the Phoenix for the entire duration of that fight.
Yeah.
And I think it was only the Phoenix that had hit him. Like, considering Vote maintains his ultimate throughout the entirety of it, no defense shred onto Haddix means that nobody else is willing to step forward. Nika and Cubo Fred try their best to dive deep, but you don't have enough damage between Bologna and Gilgamesh to shut down the back line of the Olympus Bolts, especially at this deficit. I want to see the Warriors maybe shift the game plan a little bit. If Haddix is going to play so devil may care with his positioning, you might be able to punish him because you've got the tools for it. Again, defense shred on Stinger is so slept on. It's crazy. It's essentially a Nemult that is also a Ra ult. Like,
yeah.
It's crazy.
Does a lot of damage, like you said, does a lot of shred. Maybe we'll see that come to fruition here. 20 seconds left until Fire Giant respawns in the Bolts. Positioned really aggressively here. Maybe looking for a pick. Neil, you're going to need the leap, but he just can't get it off. The door gets opened by Vote, and there they're going to find the separation necessary. They get a good amount of damage. Neil's going to have to fall back. Fire Giant lands in just a second. Haddix is pressured up on the map. Maybe expecting a little more of a fallback from the Bolts, but right now Barra's going to be waiting. I think Barra might be the guy to start this up.
He
He's
can't
be standing
solo it.
in there.
He can't tank it either. He's got no lifesteal.
There you go. He's got Haddix to help him out.
Yeah, and he's got Calder to help him out as well. That's surprising DPS, considering this is a very ability-focused build for Scotty. Oni Warriors hovering nearby. Nika spots it out. He should know, but the Olympus Bolts aren't concerned. They're going to keep on it. Fire Giant dropping low.
Yeah, it's getting closer and closer. Barra finally leashes that one, lets it go. Neil just gets eviscerated away from the game, and he's going to spend 40 seconds in timeout. Barra jumped on by Cubo. Cubo not able to find anything. Barra gets credit for the kill, but he's still low and has to play this carefully. Luckily, his team is playing Savior. Nika jumps too deep and gets punished for it. Vote, Dart as the carries, last 2 standing. Fire minions on left, pouring into the Titan room, and that should be the go button for the Bolts to start entering the right side Phoenix. They're gonna go straight to the Titan room. Lasbra, maybe not getting the full memo here. They pull it, they've got the Titan ready, and they're gonna start the damage up, but what can the carries do? Is there enough damage available? God, no! It is the Bolts who take this one 2-0, and a second kill for the Warriors at the end.
2-1. It's 2-1.
What did I say, 2-0?
Yeah,
oh,
Oni
yeah,
Warriors
you're right,
won a
that's my
game.
bad. It's 2-1.
Yeah,
Don't invalidate the 80 minutes that we spent casting earlier, all right? I know it's...
I'm sorry. That
yeah.
one's on me.
21 minutes, I believe. What was it, 23 minutes? How long was that one? Time
that
has
one?
lost all meaning to me.
That one was faster.
It was much faster. It was much more one-sided as well.
Well,
Very slow pace.
It got there.
Yeah,
Eventually, it was one-sided.
A lot of intrigue for the first 20 minutes, but maybe not so
Well,
much in the back half.
Intrigue is how you're choosing to describe it.
Well, yeah, I mean, intrigue, because, like...
I guess no, that's a good word for it.
No, because, like, it's the difference between, like, actual motion and then potential motion. What's the actual, like, physics there?
What do you mean? So you have, like, kinetic energy
Kinetic
and
energy
potential
and potential energy.
Yeah.
A lot of potential energy for the first 20 minutes, and then a lot of kinetic energy for, like, the last 10.
5. 10, 6, somewhere in between. Either way, it's a 2-1 victory for the Bolts. Again, it took about 18 minutes. 19 minutes is when things really clicked up for them. They get the Fire Giant first, open up the base, secure themselves a win just a little bit later. They take this one 2-1. We're going to have a post-game interview, all that fun stuff, right after this.
The Olympus Bolts took us to game number 3, and they were able to take game number 3 here in the set up against the Oni Warriors in much quicker fashion than we saw in our first 2 games. It was, what, like a 45-minute game, then a 40-minute game. A little bit faster now here by the Olympus Bolts, and a big win. And really kind of going in and talking a lot about the points that we were hitting earlier, Charlie, where once one of these junglers is finally able to find that pop point, once one of these junglers finally gets online, that's when we can really start seeing things come through with these teams.
Yeah, I'm going to be able to sleep finally tonight, because obviously I was talking about, I don't want to see Lasbra on these Kavrakans, these mages, things of that nature. Obviously the Hebo, he looked very good on, but the Poseidon wasn't really hitting the mark for me. That Kamazotz, that's the assassin Lasbra play that I was looking for. So I'm very, very happy with how that last game ended up going.
Yeah, and he hit the ground running very early this time around, about 4 minutes in towards that dual lane to make that initial level 5 gank, and that's where it started going uphill here for the Bolts. That's where things started to look real nice on their incline up until their victory here in game number 3. Barracuda on the Scotty. We're kind of talking a little bit about that one as well. Really great for these 1v1 boxing matches up into here. Just being able to have an additional body on the field always does helps, and that's why, when we get gods with pets in the game out here, we always kind of see this back and forth rise between them.
Yeah, I mean, Scotty, again, you're kind of just picking that pick for the 1v1 matchup. Obviously, there wasn't too much fighting happening in lane, but once the rotations happened, obviously, once Haddix on this Cthulhu was able to rotate in and just create so much space with Descent into Madness, it really just seemed like the Haddix and Lasbra show, where they were just able to dive the backline so effectively.
Yeah, and even Lasbra at this point just waiting even for their backline to dive in here and really punishing Cubo Fred in this last little push here at this left side Phoenix. Olympus Bolts, a big turnaround here from game number 2. It was a struggle for them in game number 1, and they were able to fight it back in, kind of push the Oni Warriors till 40+ minutes into the game. Game number 2, Oni Warriors kind of got the better end of that one here. But game number 3, the Olympus Bolts able to close this one out. 3-0 for Haddix, 4-0 for Lasbra out there. Barracuda even putting up a nice little 3 kills to himself here. Player damage going handily over to Haddix, but we see that over in the solo lane all the time. Solo laners always getting those big damage numbers out here. But that adjustment here in game number 3, Lasbra going back to the more traditional assassin that we're more accustomed to seeing him on here, really did make a big difference here.
I gotta say, Barra really just wants to build red items, man. He does not want to play normal ADCs. Obviously, he went Cupid and then just built full ability damage, Jotun's Crusher, Transcendence, that sort of thing, and then he just ran it back with the Scott. He just wants to build ability based. He wants big numbers. That's what Barracuda wants right now.
Hey, big numbers are always a good time in Smite, and some of those players who do see those big numbers are the junglers. We've got Lasbra here for our post-game interview. You got the little teapot going out here.
Yep.
I wouldn't say that you're short, though. You're definitely a fairly tall person here. But, Lasbra, kind of walk me through game number 2, some of the struggles you had up there against the Warriors.
I think we got a little bit outdrafted. We were trying some new stuff. Obviously, Poseidon has a few rough matchups, especially the Morrigan. And then we did a few early game misplays. So it's a little bit rough getting stuff going after the early game with the team comp we have.
Game number 1, you guys kind of fell down pretty far. It's like 6-7K gold that you guys almost swung down. And then one little spot, and you're able to swing this one back. Kind of talk about some of the mental, some of the comms going through to bring you guys back in game 1.
We're just, with the early game, again, we do mistakes. We're trying to do a bit more proactive plays and go for these spicy plays, you can almost say. And they're going wrong, but we just stick in and we usually know that a late game with that team comp is pretty good, so we are fine with playing a bit down. I think we lost all our dual lane buffs and all that, but we were able to sneak, I think, a few objectives, if I remember correctly, and then just play for the team fights. And luckily, Ven didn't get that far behind, so we just protect him and we can win the game.
You got another matchup tomorrow. You guys are going to be facing the Kings first up, starting out the day. Is there any particular threat on that team that you guys are really looking at?
I think it's just them as a whole. They have a really good map play. They have some spicy drafts coming out. But not a particular player.
All right, well, congrats on your win today. I'll let you get back with the team to celebrate, and we'll see you tomorrow. It's confidence all around for the team. A little bit of a slow start there, as he said in game number 1. But and that's always the thing that we talk about with the pros is how do you bounce back when you're down 6,000-7,000 gold down? I mean, at that point in my games, every single one of my players are like, guys, I'm down 1,000 gold total as a team. We need to slam that F6. But these guys being able to hold that one out there and bring themselves to a game 1, a mighty impressive performance out of them to bring this one back here in game 3.
Yeah, just a whole mental game, like you said. I mean, when you're in the comms like that and your team's behind, you guys say, hey, we have a pretty solid late game with this comp. We have 2 hunters, so even though we're a little bit behind, we're just going to dial this one back, play it slow, and then once we get to that 40-minute threshold into the game, we're going to be just fine. So great by them to keep the mentals clear, even though they had a little bit of a deficit there.
Yeah, and then a strong transition here in game number 3. A big win and a big congrats here to the Olympus Bolts on their first day, but that's not all that we have in store. I mean, at least for today at the very least here, though. Tomorrow and Sunday, we've got 5 more sets of the SPL. First off, tomorrow will be the Olympus Bolts and the Camelot Kings. Then we'll have the Dragons and the Scarabs to round out tomorrow's SPL. And then coming back on Sunday, we've got 3 sets for you. We've got the Scarabs and the new Valhalla Valkyries facing off, the Titans and the Dragons for our second set, and then the Leviathans up against the Warriors to close out our first week of the SPL. Any of these sets in particular, I mean, obviously our match of the week tomorrow, the Camelot Kings and the Bolts. Any other matches, though, Charlie, kind of popping out to you here?
I mean, obviously the Valhalla Valkyries for their debut, game, they had to face the world champs, the Advanced Leviathans, who still, have been looking very solid. So I'm very excited to see the Valks against someone, not the world champions, something they just get to show their stuff. We have not get to see too much out of them. So very excited to see that new, mostly rookie roster, how it performs against the Scarabs. And obviously the game of the week, tomorrow. And we finally got our cool graphics. So very happy about that, obviously. But yeah, going to be looking forward to seeing the Kings play again tomorrow.
Yeah, Kings and the Bolts tomorrow, and then as well, right after that one, the J Dragons and the Solar Scarabs. One I'm going to keep my eye on, as we did see the last matchup between them. And at least for our qualifier, our little kickoff that we had last week did go the way of the Dragons. Before it was the Scarabs. It's going to be a fun set of Smites tomorrow, fun set for the entire weekend. So make sure that you are tuning back in here tomorrow. Twitch.tv/Smite Game. We'll be back at 11 a.m. with the SEC, and then the SPL right after. On behalf of myself, Charlie, everybody else behind the scenes, and everybody at hi-rez Productions. We'll see you tomorrow.